We'll just let them get in here. Okay, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the regular Columbus Common Council meeting, and welcome to our viewers that are streaming. Could we have a roll call?
Finkler?
Here.
Hammer?
Here.
Gray?
Present.
Modiff?
Present.
Reed?
Here.
Rolke?
Here.
Steiner?
Here.
All present.
Okay, and would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And we have had notice of open meeting, correct? Okay, I would like a motion to approve tonight's agenda with clarification of the claims amount due to an updated claims report.
Alder Finkler will move to approve tonight's agenda with the update to item number 6, consider and take action on claims.
Alder Modoff will second.
Okay, I have a motion from Alder Finkler and a second from Alder Modoff to approve the agenda with the clarification of the claims amount due to the updated claim report. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, all in favor?
We say what the updated amount is.
Oh, okay, yes, I'm sorry, thank you. The updated amount is $490,554.77. And then, any further discussion now? Thank you. Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. And now correspondence and communications. Jason?
Thank you. Jason Letha, 436 West School. So last Thursday, July 20th, there was a water main break on Faith Drive. The initial fix went well. When they turned everything back on, it caused another leak down at Park Avenue. The fix extended into Friday evening, which was a significant amount of time. The second break couldn't be repaired without additional parts, assistance, and larger equipment. An emergency call was made, and a contractor, Forest Construction, responded almost immediately to assist. The repair took many different staff, support from other communities, and those who helped. The total time for the entire repair took 38 hours. This is very little rest with staff, and they were all dedicated to being there on site. I want to say how much that I appreciate them as a city engineer and the efforts by all who completed this complex repair. I have heard some comments, so I wanted to put this in perspective tonight. Most people have reliable water 365 days a year. Very rarely are people without water. These crews do all they can to prevent those outages, and they're there to fix them when they happen. Most of the water main in the streets in the city of Columbus range from 50 to 100 years old. It fails. So when we don't know everything about the underground system, it's buried. So we don't know where valves are always. We don't know where fittings are. We don't know how it's going to react when we repressurize stuff. The city has over 25 miles of water main to take care of, so it's not like they spend their time on somebody's city block worrying about their specific water main. To replace all the water main in the city, it would probably run somewhere around $50 million on back-of-napkin estimates. I don't think anybody wants the rate increase that would take to replace all the water main. You may see them standing around out there when these emergencies are happening. These crews have to follow safety protocols. They have to wait for parts to get delivered to make repairs if they don't have them. In an instance this morning when there was a water main break, they are working in very close proximity to high-pressure gas mains and high-voltage wires. So safety is of utmost priority. We want those people to do their job, and we want them to go home to their families. I would ask the public, instead of being upset you don't have water for a few hours, think of what is all being done to get you back on and back to your normal life. They are away from their families. They're often out there in poor weather conditions. These crews don't seek out recognition. They just want to do their job and get the water back on for you. Instead of being mad that you don't have water or that the street is blocked, be thankful that they're out there and they're working on your problem. I will add that this also applies for electrical outages. We had such an outage earlier this summer where the electric was out for an extended period of time. They worked just as hard during that event. So to all who responded, including the contractor Force Construction, I just want to reach out and say, I noticed what you do for the community, and I want to personally say thanks to all of you, because I know someday it will be my water or my electric that you'll be trying to fix.
Thank you. Do you want to do it now, Dennis? Okay.
Got
You're
it.
on.
All right. Well, good evening. I'm here for kind of a somber occasion for our department, for the community. This is Officer Kelly Town. He's been with our department for 19 and a half years, and she's leaving to go to another department for a specialty police position working in the schools, which has always been a goal of hers. So I wanted to take a minute to talk a little bit about her and give her some well-deserved recognition for her sacrifices, for her family sacrifice. We're here tonight and make this, kind of a happy occasion per se. She started with the department in 2004. I came here in 2003 part-time while I was working full-time elsewhere. So I've got to work with Kelly pretty much her entire career before I came full-time in 2008. So it's kind of nice being, the older guy. You can see people mature during their career and progress, and that has definitely happened here. She will do very well for the Marshall Police Department and the Marshall School District. So we're really sad to see her go. A couple of recognitions that she got. In 2015, she handled a critical incident dealing with someone with mental health issues, and she had a long rifle pointed at her. And could have used deadly force, did not. Turned into a mini standoff. Everything ended up fine, but she got some recognition, a merit award, as did Officer Schultz, who came in and participated with that as well by the Wisconsin Professional Police Association. Very well deserved. There could have been other consequences there, but there were not. And in 2021, as chief, I issued my first life-saving award to Officer Town for her participation in a group effort with someone who had collapsed, had no pulse, was not breathing, and is now living a healthy life. So those are just a couple of things. There's many other things that go on that she does day to day. She would take on any task we gave her. With National Night Out, which I'm going to talk about at the Committee of the Whole, for the last, as long as I can remember, we've been doing it. She's been an active participant in helping us plan, make calls, make contacts. A lot of work goes into that. It really, really does. So having someone like her at our disposal was actually really, really nice and really appreciative to have. Officer Town and her family live here in town. They've lived here for quite some time. Will continue to live here while working elsewhere, so we will still see her around. I just thought in this climate of law enforcement, 19 and a half years is a long time and worthy of some recognition. So I wanted to recognize her officially, and then I also have a plaque for her that we ordered. I'll read it in a minute, but this is what it is for her. It says, honoring 19 years of service, Officer Kelly Town, number 4223, that was her badge number. Thank you for your loyal, dedicated service to the Columbus Police Department and the Columbus community. You wore your badge well. February 2nd, 2004 to January 24th. I'm sorry, July 24th, 2023. Very well deserved. We had a group lunch yesterday with the department. We invited other city staff after that for some cake and just some visiting and some reminiscing, but it's a sad but a positive occasion, I think, for all. So I want to wish her well, thank her, give her a minute or so if she wants to speak. I told her to have a speech ready, but I was kidding. But I just want to formally give this to her and thank you very much for your service. Do you want to say something? If you don't, that's fine as well.
I'm not much for speeches, but almost 20 years is a long time. I started here when I was 22 years old. You can do the math of how old I am now. Special thanks to the kids and my husband sitting over there. It's been rough sometimes, but they've always had my back. That guy right there, Matt Schultz, has been there for everything. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Kelly. Okay, I will be speaking tonight on behalf of Randy Keene, who lives at 115 Greenview Drive, who was not able to make it here. So I am Randy Keene, and I live at 115 Greenview Drive. I was the city's fire chief for 12 years from 2009 to 2021. As fire chief, I was actively involved in the city's purchase of the former Countryside Ford property at 1149 West James Street in 2016 for the site of a future fire station. I wish to inform the council about some specifics of that purchase. On a Saturday morning in February of 2014, I attended a common council listening session which was held in the second ward room at City Hall outside of Michael Clark, who was running for alderman at the time. I was the only citizen there. This allowed plenty of time for a discussion about the need for a new fire station. All 6 alders in attendance agreed wholeheartedly that a new fire station was needed. I told them that I would further address the issues by putting my concerns in writing and deliver it to them. As promised, I came up with a document that I called State of the Station. It addressed 3 major areas of concern: lack of space, both inside and out, deterioration of existing building and property, and current codes that cannot be met. Every February, he would update that numbers in that document and get an updated copy to the council. Chief Hazeltine now does it annually, as he did. A location for the new fire station would have to be found. At one point, we had heard that Countryside Ford was looking for a new site. Our city administrator, Patrick Vanderzanden, and I met with Dan Fox, one of the owners of Countryside Ford. We asked if they would be relocating and would they be willing to sell their current site to the city. We were told at that time nothing was currently in the works and that it was not for sale. With that site not being available, I began to look at other sites around the city that might be big enough. Ideally, the site should be at least 3 acres to allow for the building, room for parking, and for training. The existing station was built on a mere 0.275 acre with no off-street parking and no room for training. Over the next several months, I saw 7 sites that might be big enough, but the sites were, but not good sites due to the location, accessibility, lot elevation, and on top of that, nobody wanted to sell. Of the 8 sites that I had viewed, the Countryside location was by far the best. It was centrally located on the main artery with easy access to the center of the 3 exits to Highway 151. It is easily accessible by firefighters responding to the station, whether using West James Street or via Meister Drive from the back side. When I was fire chief, I was surprised at the number of people who thought that personnel at the station, or who thought that had personnel at the station around the clock. No emergency vehicles were able to be moved out until personnel arrived from their homes, places of employment. The proper location of a fire station is extremely important to response times. Response times include not only the time from the station to the emergency scene, but also includes the time for personnel to reach the station. This is obviously a key factor to public safety. At the end of 2015, the owners of Countryside contacted the city advising that they were now willing to sell and the wheels were set in motion. At Common Council meeting on March 29, 2016, the council unanimously voted to make an offer to purchase in the amount of $700,000. Copy of that meeting's minutes is enclosed. This is an example of the council at that time thinking ahead and planning for the future. On April 1st, 2016, an offer was made by the city. This offer showed that the total size of the land being purchased was 3.2 acres. A copy of that offer is enclosed as well. The offer of $700,000 was accepted with no counteroffer. That's in enclosure number 2. In 2017, all of the James Street was to be reconstructed including underground utilities. At the May 18, 2016 council meeting, it was unanimously approved to add conduit for a fiber optic connection between City Hall and a future fire station at 1149 West James Street. Copy of those minutes is included. This is, again, another example of a council thinking ahead and planning for the future. In this regard, I had some questions for the council. I assume that you have a plan of what to do with the sandbagging operation which is currently in the building. There are hundreds of filled sandbags on pallets ready to go for the next flood. In addition to the filled sandbags, there is equipment and a pile of sand in an area that is used for filling more sandbags. If you do not have a plan, unlike the Council of 2016, this is not an example of council thinking ahead and planning for the future. There is also the fire department's equipment that is currently in storage there. There is a trailer with technical rescue equipment, training props, and the department's nearly 100-year-old antique engine waiting for a permanent home, as well as the turn-of-the-century hose cart. If you do not have a plan, unlike the Council of 2016, this is not an example of the council thinking ahead and planning for the future. Now back to the purchase price. I was unable to find a copy of the real estate appraisal. However, I was able to obtain a copy of the tax records for the property from 2016. Copy of those records, tax records, is included. Property was comprised of 3 parcels. According to the tax records, the total fair market value was $1,129,400. Yet the Countryside owners settled for $700,000 with no counteroffer. Why? They stated they wanted to be good citizens and accepted the offer from the city so that they could purchase the property for a future fire station. Remember their desire to sell the property for a fire station. City Administrator Vanderzand and others also recall the same. Obviously, the Countryside owners received tax benefits for their charitable contribution to the city. However, if you doubt their intentions of providing for a location of fire station, do you really think that they would have made a donation of over $400,000 so that the city would have another dollar store? What are your plans for the location of the future fire station? Do you even have a plan? The Common Council in 2016 did. It's too bad that their forward thinking may have gone for nothing. Any decisions you make will affect the city for decades. If you sell off this property, there are no locations in the city that are suitable for a fire station. I'm asking you to do the right thing, the ethical thing, and do what is best for public safety by keeping that property for the fire station. Okay. And then our next on our list is Scott Hazeltine. So if you can.
Right, evening. I'll pass out papers quick on the vehicle.
Thank you.
So what I handed you was, I know the questions they had for me last time at the committee of the whole. I spoke with, I actually tried to talk with Ewald about getting numbers on the truck, our existing truck, and I could not get any response from them to get back to me, and I finally told them yesterday that if you can get back to me I'd go elsewhere. So what I did was I went back and talked to Napleton, and I showed them the difference in the prices, and I said, I'd like to keep it local, but if this company is not going to work with us to get the pricing, how are they going to be with us for service? So I talked to them, they came back, and they talked to Danny, the owner, and they agreed to match the spec. Very same exact spec that I gave you at the last meeting. That's on the next page, same price. And then I talked to them, they took our current 2007 F-150 out, took that for a drive, came back, and they said, I told them that if we would get approved to get the pickup truck, it's going to be at least first quarter of next year, if not the second quarter, and I'm going to have to, before the snow flies, I'm going to have to put a new set of tires on it. So they said if you put a new set of tires on it this fall, we'll give you $5,000 for the pickup. So on the last page, I checked surplus, because that's the one we kind of thought about too. So I I went through, spent a good hour going through everything and trying to get something fairly close. So you can see the prices range quite a bit. There's closest, the truck we have right now is a F-150, it's a half-ton. So that closest would be like a 2011 Chevy Silverado 1500 extended cab 2900 that got on surplus. So then the bottom you can see that's fairly description of our current truck, the F-150 half-ton. So I guess I'm asking for approval to go ahead with this. Your thoughts?
Well, but that's going to be number 4 under new business.
Oh, what are we doing here?
Well, this was citizen comment.
Oh, it
that
was.
you had signed up for.
I'm sorry. All right. I'm just going off of Randy's talk of selling off the station site. Like Randy said, I haven't heard anything about where we're going to centralize. I know Ian said something about maybe the Fuller, the tower address. However, when I heard Jeff Venden talking about the Fuller Street, that could be an issue because with all the fire trucks going on through there and firefighters going to calls, that could be an issue. He talked about the fiber optic cable going in there. That's something that I'm sure wasn't cheap. And then another location we'd always talked about if we didn't have it out here was if we had any kind of agreement to go something closer to the hospital. The only problem with that is, going to the west side, the only problem with that is we'd have to come through town to go out east on 1660. We'd have to come through town and out through. That could be a short, some kind of a delay. So that's not the greatest as well. So if you've been, some of you have been at the station earlier this year, and I've said anytime you want to stop by, you're welcome to. As you can tell, if you walk in our station, you can see that we're really packed. It's a dangerous situation for my guys. Really tight in there. We can't open both doors at the same time when we have a call. People have run into them. Thank God we haven't had anybody fall down when we're pulling the truck out of the station. So we got people running past trucks to get on the other side of the station and get their gear on. And then I know when I had a locker, when I was in there getting dressed, I would have to lean against the locker to get dressed so other firefighters could get by me to get between me and the truck. So it's not a good situation. Plus, we wanted to put like an exhaust system in there for protect the firefighters against the exhaust fumes and the carcinogens, because carcinogens, they're finding out now, the leading cause of death in firefighters are testicular cancer, and that's coming from carcinogens. We sweat, and then all the carcinogens from the plastics in the house structure, you sweat, and it comes down, and where does it all congregate? In your underwear. So that's a leading cause of death in the fire service. So we're trying to do that, but we just don't have the room to do it. Another thing, we're not ADA. I know I put this on the state of the station, but I'm just going to bring it up again. Not ADA compliant. Our furnaces are over 25 years old. In fact, our AC is having problems with getting worked on today. Garage door openers from the 90s. The lighting and the ventilation is old, and we're supposed to wash our firefighter gear twice a year to keep the carcinogens off, but we only got room for one washer, so it's kind of hard to get everybody's clean. Our dream for the station was to have a training tower, parking, and station to be out of the traffic. It's one of the things I know people complain about, and people swerve around us when we're trying to back into the fire station. But our thought was having a station there and then having a training tower so we could take our people out at any time, walk out to the training tower and work on it. That's being taken up by the Family Dollar. So that's going to have to rethink that. So if we do a training tower on a site across town or another facility site, that we're going to have to load that truck full of firefighters. So if we get a call, we can respond instead of driving the truck back to the station and picking people up. So. So at some point, community needs to think about the people who protect them. We're expected always to be at our best, becoming difficult with aging apparatus and an aging fire station. Just asking to give this some attention.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, next on the agenda is the consent agenda with the council and committee of the whole minutes from 7/11/23 and approve the operator licenses for 7/1/23 through 6/30/25. And there was an added sheet with an addition. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Alder Motif will make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the addition of the operator license update that we received tonight with the additional licensee.
Alder Rolke will second.
Okay, I have a motion from Alder Motif and a second from Alder Roki to approve the consent agenda with the updated operator license attached. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries. On to new business. Consider and take action on task order 2023-03 for the 2024 street and utility construction project. This was presented by Jason last meeting on the streets that will be up for repairs. So I would entertain a motion to approve the task order 2023-03.
Alder Gray moves to approve task order number 2023-03.
Alder Motif will second.
Okay, I have a motion from Alder Gray and a second from Alder Motif to approve task order 2023-03 for the 2024 street and utility reconstruction project. Any discussion on this? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, now consider and take action on resolution number 6-23 to approve the Folsom Street Special Assessment and Final Report.
Alder Gray moves to approve resolution -623 to approve the Folsom Street Special Assessment and Final Report.
Alder Finkler will second.
Okay, I have a motion from Alder Gray and a second from Alder Finkler to approve the resolution number 6-23 to approve the Folsom Street Special Assessment and Final Report. Any further discussion on this? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, moving on. Item number 3 was to be consider and take action on the chicken permit at 443 West Prairie Street, but the chicken coop is no longer there and the house is for sale. So we cannot approve this. So do we need a motion to, or just?
No, you don't even have to table, just remove it from
Just-
your agenda.
Okay, just remove.
And pass over it.
All right, item removed. Okay, now consider and take action on the additional funds for the fire department pickup truck. Was there anything further that you needed to state on that?
Took advantage of the situation. No, that's all I got. I guess any questions you might have.
Chief,
Yeah.
were you using it as a trade-in at Ewald? I was a little confused because they gave you a value of the truck, of the existing F-150. Are you trading that in, or?
Well, the thought was we were going to go on surplus, but then when I got looking over past auctions and I found similar vehicles on the surplus and talking to Napleton, they said that they would give us, as long as I got the new tires on there, they'll give us $5,000 for the truck. And from the numbers you see on the last page here, what I saw going through the surplus, trying to find something fairly close, it almost makes more sense to go with the sure 5,000. But that's your call. We can put it on surplus if you want, but.
Okay, so we're looking at a total price of $47,658.50, not
Not including-
counting anything about the
Right.
truck. Okay, thank you. I was just a little
Okay.
confused on that answer.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you.
John?
Oh, I'm sorry. Alder Moda.
I actually have a couple questions. I think the first one is for our interim city administrator. Do we need to wait, since our contract for the fleet expires in September, and what they're looking for is higher than what our agreed-upon contract prices are?
Well, what I think we said last meeting was that you're basically committing 2024 budget funds in '23.
Okay.
I think that's what Brandon, isn't that kind of how we put it last time? So you're committing, so when you do your 2024 budget this fall, you'll have that fixed cost, that you have no, wiggle room on, which is not I'm not judging that, I'm just saying that's what we said, that you're making a commitment for 2024 budget in 2023, and it's done.
So do we need to worry about the 2024, the contract that's going to start October 1st at all?
And I don't know, I don't understand the question about what contract on October.
It is our law enforcement, light-duty trucks, passenger, it's our fleet agreement with the Department of Administration, in which we have set limits for purchasing vehicles.
And I didn't research that, I apologize, I didn't expect that question. I don't know, maybe Brandon has an answer to that, or no? Or the chief, I'd have to go back and look, I did not research that.
And then my other question is there any of the equipment on the current truck that can be moved to the new truck? Is it necessary to buy all new lights, a new radio? I mean, are any of those things that you have updated over the years?
There's the radio we can use, we can switch over. The siren controls are very old. They come off another truck, so I'd have to look at the age on it, so it's probably 20-plus years old. The lights, we can probably take them off. That would probably cause more. I don't think we'd put them on a new truck, because there's the NFPA compliancy is a little different now. It's like we put a full light bar up on top of the cab instead of the little one that's on it now. So.
And then my last question is, has this been discussed, and have we created our rural group so that the city of Columbus is not absorbing all of this? I mean, I would think that the intent of this truck would primarily be used in the rural areas.
Not necessarily, because we use that truck for classes, we use that for doing inspections, we use that for towing the trailer on the UTV, which also we use in the city. So it works for both there, and under the current contract, it's not listed on part of the rural.
Have we made progress on making our rural district?
That discussion hasn't started yet.
Oh, I'm sorry. Alder Gray. Thank you.
My understanding is that the vehicles are covered under our current agreement by 50% with the rural group and 50% with the community. It's just like the fire station wouldn't be covered, for example, but the vehicles should be, correct?
I can tell you our ladder and one of our engines is all city, 100%. And then our squad, our rescue truck, and our rural engine, and those are 50/50.
Right.
And then we have a pumper tanker and 2 water tankers. Those are 100% rural. And then the UTV is rural as well. So, but the trucks are all, per the contract I was looking at, the trucks weren't under city, they weren't under rural. So that'd be something
Okay,
they'd have to set up for the 27, because the current contract goes till 27. And I can tell you,
As a layperson, maybe I read it wrong, but I thought that the vehicles So basically, the rural group is supposed to initiate the purchase, and then it would be covered by them by 50%. So like technically, they should be initiating the purchase, not you. That's how I read it. I could easily be wrong. Someone else could be much more well versed in that.
Well, I think like the fire engine, we were just
What?
going,
Said I haven't looked at that for years.
Yeah, it's been a hot minute for me too. Like I didn't prep enough for this, to be honest. But I believe remembering that the rural group was supposed to initiate the purchase, and they would pay for 50% of it. So like maybe we're going about this all the wrong way.
yeah, it depends what truck it is. Like with the fire engine that they had us wait on because they weren't gonna have money in time. That was the rural engine, that was a 50/50 truck. So I guess in the contract, that was the rural group with the fire department leading, specking out the truck. And then they would decide whether we're gonna get it or not. It was a decision that they would have, and the city would have to come up with half the price.
Right. Would this truck not
Not
benefit the
this truck
rural
is not
group at
part of
all?
that.
This truck does nothing for
No,
the
this
rural
is-
group. It's 100% city.
It's funded by the city, yeah, but it's
Well, I
like
mean,
a common agreement, we share trucks back and forth, so.
So
that's
it would
wh-
benefit the rural group.
Yes, but it's not in a contract to be, just like we've taken the city engine and the ladder out on rural calls, but it's they're city vehicles. So we kind of share them back and forth, so
Okay. I'm
yeah.
along the same thought process of Aldermotive that we might have to vet this a little bit more and figure out the best possible path forward.
Alder Reed?
Oh, thank you. I guess I'm not really worried about purchasing the truck, 5-6 months ahead of our scheduled plans. I'm assuming it'll probably be 2027 before we can do real negotiations with the rural group for our current contract.
Yeah, because thinking about it now, in our last rural meeting, I did bring up something about a district, and I only had one township said they'll pull out. So I think there needs to be more discussion, still gonna work on it, but still have to work on, more discussion with them on that. So.
So, any further discussion on this? I mean, what I'm hearing from three is that this probably should be tabled, just to gather more information, or?
I would prefer for this to be tabled at this point.
I think we have the time for it, is kind of my thought process is like, it's not something we have to do today, it's a 2024 purchase. So is there a need to push it through really quickly before we have the full answers of everything?
Being that this is on the, I'm sorry, Alder Reed.
Oh, thank you. I mean, for myself, I'm fine either way, purchasing it today or purchasing soon. I don't want to let many months go by. I just know how much of a backlog different vehicles have been, especially, for the police. And I don't want to run into that problem here if we can avoid it. But I would agree that's not an emergency for today.
Alder Steiner, do you have an opinion?
I think we should have a motion before we continue discussing this.
Oh, that's very true, we didn't. Okay, well, let's entertain a motion to consider and take action on additional funds for the fire department pickup truck.
Aldermotive will make a motion to table this topic until we can gather more information.
Alder Steiner can second that.
Okay, I have a motion from Alder Motive to table this item and a second from Alder Steiner. Okay, any further discussion now? Okay, Alder Finkler.
I just have a comment. I don't believe we mean to table this. I believe we mean to postpone it, and a date needs to be chosen. So I believe we need to amend that motion.
Would you like to, Alder Motif, would you like to?
I can
yeah.
amend my motion that we are postponing this until we can gather more information. Before I make that formal motion, though, my question is, could we have it by the next meeting? Is that enough time?
I
Is
think
it,
just postpone until the next meeting and then.
Okay, so let's just postpone it until our next regularly scheduled council meeting.
So what you're looking for is the fleet question? We have to, yes.
I'll second the amendment.
Okay, so I have a motion from Alder Motif to postpone the item, and a second from Alder Steiner. Still any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, postponed. Thank you. Number 5 is
I
considering.
just have a quick comment, though. Is it clear what the outstanding items are? Like, I feel like it isn't clear at all. I'm okay postponing it to the next meeting, but we need to be clear what needs to occur.
Can
I'd like to know.
I share my
just
recap?
Point it out so I can talk with them to have the answers.
Okay. Yeah, share your recap on your.
My recap is, and if I'm wrong, please chime in, guys. We need to review our DOA contract and see if that's being renewed in October, if it'll affect anything. We need to review our rural group agreement to see if this truck would be included or if they would be willing to contribute more even outside our agreement. And I believe that's it.
I think also the outside equipment that can be transferred from one vehicle to the next, the
Yeah.
cost of that would be, and, you know, if it's even possible to use any of it, if it's still up to standards or code or whatever it be.
Okay. Because we might have a new radio putting in, I have an AF3 grant, federal grant out to replace all the truck radios, so there might be a new radio for that truck. But
All right. We're good. All right, and then now let's move on to consider and take action on the fire department to accept donation from American Packaging for new hose, correct? So I would entertain a motion for that.
Alder Finkler will move to approve the $5,000 donation from American Packaging.
Alder Rolke will second.
I have a motion from Alder Finkler and a second from Alder Rolke to accept the donation from American Packaging in the amount of $5,000. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, donation accepted. And thank you, American Packaging. And now, consider and take action on the claims in the amount of $490,554.77.
Alder Gray moves to approve the claims in the amount of $490,554.57.
77.
77 cents.
Alder Motif will second.
Okay, I have a motion from Alder Gray and a second from Alder Motif to approve the claims of $490,554.77. Any further discussion? Okay, roll call vote.
Gray,
Aye.
Motif,
Aye.
Reed,
Aye.
Rolke,
Aye.
Steiner,
Aye.
Finkler. Finkler.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, report of city officers. Chris. Your mic.
I'm sorry.
It's on. Now it's off. I think, there.
I'll get it by the end of August, I'll have this figured out. So we're working on a few things like the Public Works Superintendent job description, just trying to make sure that before we go out, it's all what we want it to be, which will come in front of the board, obviously. And we're looking at some of updating the compensation plan a little bit, just to bring to the council at some point before budget. We think that's important. looking at our investment policy and some potential with Crystal, a couple private firms who do that, just kind of exploring that. And I know there's an investment committee that the mayor mentioned, so once we get that far, we'll probably bring them in. We're looking at a contract for zoning services. As you know, Brandon is leaving us, and last time you had Matt leave, we worked with Vanderwell to take some of that off the new administrator and the interim administrator. Also looking for a contract from our building inspector to do a little bit of the zoning, small zoning projects like decks and things that Brandon does now, probably just split it like we do with building permits. So just some interim work that we think is important. Our engineer will be talked about doing some of the work that Brandon does in the public works area, such as driveway permits and things of that sort. So we really appreciate that because it seems like a lot of, little things that, Brandon took care of that needs to be covered until we, rehire. So those are some of the options we're looking at right now. We're also reviewing the refuse cart cost analysis on when we change refuse companies. Do we purchase new carts through the existing company, or do we buy them from the county? So we'll have an analysis on that. And we're wondering if there's any questions about tomorrow night's meeting. So I don't know if you're all set, as it's still 4 o'clock. I don't know,
Still
Mayor, if you were
4
going to
o'clock.
talk about it, okay, so we're all ready. And if you're not going to be here, there was a request for, to send those videos ahead of time so that you can participate, maybe as part later in the meeting if you're working or not. So we have that technology, thanks to David. He really
May I ask a
helped
quick
us on that.
question? Pat, did you get my response for the Zoom link? Thank you.
And then next week, obviously, the 4th and the 5th, is that?
3rd and 4th.
3rd and 4th, thank you. We've got some work to do then, and so I don't know if Thursday night is sort of a meet and greet type thing, and then Friday's our assessment center.
To piggyback off of Chris's statement, last time for the meet and greet, it was alders and their significant others, and then department heads and their significant others, and to meet with the finalists. So, and Amy Jo and Pat and I are working on the parts for the meet and greet. So,
Thank you.
I'm not going to steal Dennis's bubble, other than National Night Out. He's going to speak on that at the Citizens' Comment of the Cow. My thanks to the city employees for their hard work and cooperation through this transition period with the new hires. Things have been going very well. And everybody seemed to step up to the plate, so that's just awesome. And finally, I wish to wish Brandon Bledsoe the very best for his upcoming position of Village Administrator of Marshall. So thank you very much, Brandon. It's been a pleasure working with you through this time. So best wishes to you. All right. With that, I look for a motion to adjourn.
Alder Motif will make a motion to adjourn.
I will second.
Okay, I have a motion from Alder Motif and a second from Alder Finkler to adjourn. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
Maybe
So-
besides me, you need like 5 minutes?
Okay, fine.
So,
Will you make sure that gets
Yes, I got him down.
I talked to him.
Okay. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's Columbus Common Council Committee of the Whole meeting. It is Tuesday, July 25th, 7:25 p.m. And if I could please have a roll call, Pat.
Finkler,
Here.
Hammer,
Here.
Gray,
Present.
Motive,
Present.
Reed,
Here.
Roki,
Here.
Steiner,
Here.
all present.
Okay. And tonight's meeting has been noticed. I will take a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Alder Finkler will move to approve tonight's agenda.
Go.
Gray, second.
Okay, I have a motion from Alder Finkler and a second from Alder Gray. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you.
There was citizen comment. I gave the sheet back to.
Oh, okay.
So, it was Dennis.
All righty. Chief Weiner?
Good evening again. I have two items I'm just going to talk about real briefly. The first one is a change to National Night Out. National Night Out is next Tuesday at Fireman's Park from 5:30 until 8. The change that I made today, based on the weather we're experiencing, and they're talking about it staying warm possibly into next week, we are moving away from the pavilion, and we're going to be working out of the concession stand and the stage and the shelter that's next to it and all of that open area there. That's a much more suitable location with all the shade and with some of the shelter and the stages there. One of the biggest benefits is that it'll cut the physical work down probably by 60% for Public Works, because essentially they haul stuff from there over to the pavilion every year. So I met with them there today and we talked about things, and it's going to be a fraction of the work. The concession stand, or beer tent as we call it, because it's used for the 4th mostly when we deal with it. The setup is great. They've got coolers inside that we can put our water in that we're going to be giving out. Put that in maybe Monday. Plenty of plugs to keep our food warm. Set up the grill directly behind. So that's the only change. So people coming and maybe expecting to see everything going on at the pavilion are going to see nothing, unless if it's raining. But I think that they will figure out that where we are. So please come. Lots of stuff for the kids to do. That we have part of this, and then also the playgrounds are right there. The Park and Rec are going to be there with their water balloon slingshot again. That's always a big hit for the kids, and if it's hot out, it'll probably be even bigger. Free food. There's no cost for absolutely anything. We're having brats, burgers, hot dogs, chips, water. Kona Ice is going to be there. I can't remember what Amy Sandow's donut truck is called. That's going to be there. So there's plenty of stuff for everybody, and it's 5:30 until 8. The food until it's gone. Last year we ran out shortly before 8. That was a good problem to have. But when it's gone, it's gone. We're going to have a DJ. We're going to have raffles, and we're just hoping for a really nice night to interact with the community. We really look forward to it. And also, if you saw in my monthly report that we acquired a UTV, that is ready to go. So you'll see that on display there. It actually looks very sharp considering the minimal amount of money we have into it. So the DNR is also coming with the UTV, and a warden is going to be here to answer questions and those types of things. So we're really looking forward to it overall. So thank you again for changing our council meeting to accommodate that, and I look forward to seeing you there. Parking, last part of this is parking. The Columbus High School parking lot, I've talked to the superintendent, he's fine with it. We'll have the gate open between the high school parking lot that leads to the access road, so you don't have to walk up to the front of the parking lot and cut over and then walk down and around back. That gate will be open. The aquatic center will be, lap swim will be done probably 5-ish, according to Amy Jo, so the aquatic center parking lot. And then also potentially the large area of what is the midway during the 4th of July may be open for parking or not. We're still waiting for confirmation from MedFlight on whether we can land them on the football field. Otherwise, we need to keep that area open for MedFlight. So we're hoping to, restrict a lot of the congestion that's on Park Avenue and those types of issues. And I think they'll be able to land on there. I'm just worried about the sandstorm. But if they land to the south, which is mostly the outfield, I think it's possible. But that answer will be coming out soon. There'll be a blast. David sent out a blast today at my request to everybody on the Facebook page. There'll be another reminder, and then maybe an update when I have that answer about the parking situation, but we're looking forward to it. So next topic, I just wanted to give a kind of a 4th of July recap. That's typically mandatory work days for everybody, even if it's your off days. When we hire people, we tell them that during the interview process. The string of days around the 4th of July are going to be mandatory work days. So being short a couple of people, they worked even more. So park-wise, everything was fine. We really had no issues. We were very busy out in the community. I went on many calls. We had a situation in a part of town with careless fireworks that lit an abandoned lot on fire that got within 6 feet of a house. So fortunately, Chief Hazeltine and a couple of his firefighters that lived nearby responded and had their own fire extinguisher, so that could have been a mess. It was headed for a big field, a big hay field. So, and then to top it off, the people that lit them off were uncooperative and wouldn't talk to us, and then called the next day to apologize. But it was an unfortunate situation. A lot of grass burned, like 2/3 of a decent-sized lot burned to grass as dry as it was, and could have been a lot worse, but it wasn't. In general, the 4th was great. I want to give a shout out to the 4th of July committee. We work close with them, and I checked in daily, sometimes multiple times in the evening with Troy, with Dave Malone, and with Max Handler, and they really have a good handle on things. I don't think people have any idea what it takes to put on an event like that. I'm looking at putting on a 2.5-hour event for National Night Out, and I know how much planning and how many people are involved with that. So I want to say they do a great job. We enjoy working with them, and we have a really good relationship. We exchange some ideas. Every year, there's room for change or to reconsider some things. Next year, some traffic flow issues and maybe some more barricades and signs and things like that are definitely needed in a few areas. But other than that, it was a great event, a safe event in the park, and busy out in the community, but we expect that. Thank you.
Anybody else for citizens' comments who did not get a chance to sign up, who wanted to speak? Okay. Next item on the agenda, included in your packet, you'll find department reports for June 2023 from DPW, Fire, Library, Police, Treasurer, and the wastewater treatment plant. And next on the agenda is to discuss the 2023 Whistler Street ratings. Jason?
Just so you're all aware, this is dangerous. I love talking streets, so buckle up. No, I'll go pretty quickly. I have lots of information about roads. I encourage you guys to ask questions. In your packet is a graph. That's just kind of the summary. We do road ratings as required by the state DOT every 2 years, which are odd years. The ratings are based on your requirement to receive the state aid for the local road program. These ratings do not include the state highways, so the connecting highways are not in here, or the county highways, so County Highway K, i.e. Fuller Street, does not get rated, but everything else gets rated in here. What I wanted to kind of show you is, obviously I've been doing this for a while. These graphs don't come out of Whistler. I put these together for you because I think there's some valuable information here. What I'd like to show here, or just talk about briefly, is kind of the progress, or where you guys sit historically. So we'll just take these quickly by category and talk about those. So roads rated 1 to 2 are very poor roads, failing, potholes, really bad shape, loss of surface. You probably all know where some of these are around town. Nobody wants them. Nobody wants to drive on them. People that live there want them fixed. You can see starting back in 2007, 10% of the roadways were in this category. Today there's 11%. So I would label this entire graph as, I use the term treading water. I don't think you're losing ground. I don't think you're really gaining ground, and you can kind of see it in that category. Jumping to the 3s and 4s are a little better. They got lots of patches in, maybe some pothole areas. There are some areas that may be okay, but definitely some failing areas. That group you can see has declined over the period of rating, about 4%, and if you look on the bottom left, about 1% is a quarter mile. So if you see a 4% decline, you can kind of figure out that there's a fair amount of miles of roadway that attributes to. If you draw a line between the 3 and 4 categories and the 5 and 6 categories, anything in those first 2 that I talked about, I consider reconstructs. If we're going to fix those roads, that's a full rebuild. Dig them out, rebuild them. Anything to the right of that line, once we get into these 5, 6, and aboves, those are all roads that are in a little better shape. And, that's where we spend our maintenance money on those. And so as we kind of climb there, you'll see the 5, 6 range. You can see that there's a significant trend up in those percentages over the years. What's occurring there is that we did a lot of work in the city probably back in the 2007 range. Those roadways are 15 years old. We've been spending a little maintenance money on those, but what we're seeing is kind of a cascade of those roads starting to slip into a 6 rating. Still not a terrible road. It's got some cracks in, surface deteriorating, it's aged, it's fading. There might be some surface spalling, but those roads are certainly gradually deteriorating. So you see those roads starting to fall into that 5, 6 range. Most of those in that 29% are, I would say, rated 6, which means they'll be in that 5 to 6 category for a while. A lot of those have just fell into that category the last couple of years. As we look at the 7 and 8s, those are pretty good roads. I mean, people would drive on them, would probably think they're relatively new. They do have some cracking that we classify for their classification. You can see that group is tailing off fairly quickly. Again, that transition that I talked about. I look at this as combining the two categories. If we combine 5, 6, and 7, 8, and we look at the initial year of rating in 2007, you have 58% of your roads in those two categories. If you look at this year's ratings, you have 58% in those two categories. They've shifted a little bit, but the same roads are in those same two categories. And again, as long as we're to the right of the reconstruct line, it is what it is. And then let's jump to 9 and 10s. Those are our new roads, essentially stuff that has been done in our projects over the last few years. Those roads obviously stay in that category for a while. They don't tend to fall out of that category very quickly. So when you start talking about roads that are probably 10 years or less old that have been reconstructed, that's where they lie. So with that being said, just a couple other quick notes before I open it up for questions. For the approved capital plan that you guys approved right before Kyle left for streets, that plan accounts for approximately 2% change from that 1 to 2 category up to the 9s and 10s in 24, 25, 26, 28, 30, and 32 for 14% change over a 10-year period. Now, keep in mind as you move those streets up to 10s, there's going to be others that'll fall back into the 1s and 2s. But it is a significant start. There was a street study done in 2013 by myself and Rupert Milkey where we thought that the average spend value that we recommended the city spend annually on roads was $500,000 for streets. I keep track of all of the spending costs for everything over the annualized years, and you've averaged $260,000. So you fell below, not you personally, but the city has fallen below that mark. Hence, I think the treading water statement. I think if we were spending a little bit more, we'd be seeing, trend shifting upwards to improving roads. I will leave you with the capital plan that's in place right now. If that stays the course, you will be spending $859,000 annually going forward on average. So when we talk about you were spending $260, we've bumped that fairly significantly. I think that's a commitment to roads. I think right now you see that you are treading water, as I would put it. And I think that commitment in the new capital plan, you're going to start seeing some of these numbers shift further right, and you're going to start to see those improvements. I will leave you with one last statement. Everybody that I've ever talked to thinks that their roads are the worst roads in the state. I can guarantee you I can find graphs worse than this because I rate other cities. You guys are in relatively good shape overall, even though some people may not believe that. Questions?
So you, for how much we've spent per annum for 260, over how many years are you averaging that? Is that from 2007 till now?
I got 2009 to 23.
2009 to 23. So between 2009 and so that's not a graph that we have in front of us. We don't have that information.
I didn't.
So, what?
I have it, but I didn't provide that to you,
Right.
sorry.
That's what I mean. I'm guessing like 2009 through like the teens is much lower than it was after that, because we've been routinely spending significantly more than that since I've been on council. We've been spending a lot of money every year, far above $260,000 a year.
That is correct. There are some years projects weren't spent, though. And when I say weren't, I'm not including money spent on state highways because we're
Okay.
kind of focused on local roads.
Right, that's true.
So you are probably correct. There are some big years where we dump money into James Street. That's a big number. We've dumped money into Highway 89. That's a big number. They don't show up on your local road ratings. So I am, for a point of clarification, you're absolutely right, but I am focusing the 260 on the local road average, so.
Right. And it skews it for
It
the
does.
years prior to recent years.
Yes. And there was a stretch in 13, there wasn't money spent. And again, keep in mind, there was money spent on Hall Road years ago. That was a new road. There was the Enerpac development. There was 2 new roads. There was money spent. I'm not counting new roads going into this as money. I'm only counting repair of existing roads because that's what affects the graph. So again, point of clarification, you're absolutely right. You really have to kind of take the numbers. But I was only looking at repair money going into roads for what roads were currently in existence that weren't state highways. So I appreciate that. That's a good question.
Which is to discuss the bid recommendation for street maintenance.
Thank you. So we put out to bid our annual street maintenance program, and included in your packet is a listing of the bid singular received. Unfortunately, we only got one, so that's the bad news. The good news is it was pretty much exactly what we were expecting the cost to be, which was the good news. So due to lack of competing bids and the fact that this was fell right within our budget, we are going to recommend moving forward with this bid for Wolf Paving in the amount of $85,196. We did have a base bid, and then we had some alternates that we tacked onto that because we wanted to try and leverage as close as we can to the budget amount. And we could probably take another alternate or two and add that into here. I did hold a little back intentionally, and the reason I did that is prior years have taught me that when we do this on a square yard unit basis, sometimes we end up cutting the saw cut line a foot outside of where we anticipated or originally measured it, and the prices come in a little higher when we do our final paving costs. And I really don't want to push the recommendation up really tight against your budget. I'd rather have a little play in there just to make sure we have costs to cover that as soon as we kind of finalize things out. So that's why I am choosing the base bid plus alternates A1 and D1 for patching. So the entire street maintenance contract this year I'm recommending to be spent on actual patching. Going back to our previous graph, I think patching is a good alternative to fix some of those roads and even possibly change the rating of them if we can fix some of the poor areas in those. So I guess if there's any questions on that bid, I'll entertain them, but that's our recommendation.
Are we comfortable moving this forward to the regular meeting?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, and I believe you also have the next item on the agenda, which is to discuss the task order for the UD Dam inspection.
Yeah, the next two. So the task order before you is a request that came from Public Works. There are a couple components that are due this year for the UD Dam. There's an inspection that's required by the DNR that occurs every 2 years. There also is a emergency action plan and an inspection operations and maintenance plan, and then lastly, a spillway capacity analysis. And so some of that work, a couple of those items were required to be due last year, and some of that was submitted. I was not part of that. It was submitted by somebody else. And there was, I believe that was the spillway capacity analysis was not completed. So what we're trying to do with this task order is we're trying to kind of lump it all together and get everything back up to where we need to be. One is the inspection, getting the report filed, verifying that the emergency action plan, the EAP, the IOM, which is the inspection operation maintenance plan, are acceptable to the DNR, and there's no changes required on that. And then we want to finalize that spillway capacity analysis and provide that to the DNR as well. So that's all included in the scope of services here. We would obviously complete the work within 60 days of authorization. We'd work with the DNR to meet those requirements and provide that information. I don't know that there's how much work is associated with the IOM or the EAP based on what was submitted last year, so we threw in some estimated hours. This is an hourly contract. If we don't need them, we don't spend them. But we just wanted to make sure we had some time in there to cover that, to make sure we could take care of all the issues related to the dam. So any questions on the task order?
Alder Gray?
So, of course, with the Uday Dam, or Udi, however we pronounce it, I apologize if I pronounce it incorrectly. If we're looking at it this closely, would it make sense to also look at its effectiveness and its effect on the water table and whether or not it should, if it would be more effective to be removed? Like, would it be a large additional cost to just do a more holistic study on Udi Dam?
Yeah, the thought is, in my mind, that in the comprehensive stormwater study, we did look at the influence area of the dam when in that report. We didn't really get into the exact details of that, but I think we determined that the influence is limited to the upstream and downstream, and obviously it does have some impact on the tailwater. But as part of that comprehensive study, we did run some models with the dam removed to see if it impacted the second ward drainage or any of our storm sewers. And so I think we spent a fair amount of time analyzing that in the comprehensive study, and there is a part of that study that covers that. If you are looking for something in addition to that, I think we can kind of identify what that need is and take a look at it. Certainly, we have the model set up to do the spillway emergency analysis. We have the models yet from the comprehensive study. So if there is some piece of information missing that somebody's looking for, we can certainly do that at, I think, a relatively minimal cost. But that would really be, I guess, just a point of clarification as to what you were looking for specifically.
Well, whether or not the Udi Dam should remain in its current state or if it should just be removed and more naturalized.
Yeah, and I think to our point, I think in the comprehensive study is there's certainly pros and cons to both, right?
Right.
And it really kind of comes down, I think, to policy decision. There are some benefits, I think, for leaving it in. There's some benefits for taking it out. I personally had believed before we done the comprehensive study that there would probably be a more impact hydraulically to the drainage. But once we ran the models and realized that the influence was fairly limited, I don't think that that's as big of an issue that I would support, removing the dam, as an impact on stormwater. So I think we can certainly look at that, but, whether it stays in or comes out, I really think is a decision that has to be made by the community based on, the pros and cons.
Okay. No, I was more just wondering if there was any additional things that you think we should measure to have a full picture since you're looking at the dam more specifically this time. But
yeah, I mean,
if
we
there
can
isn't-
certainly take a little deeper look at what's available out there for funding for removals and, I think one thing that comes out of these inspections and spillway analysis are there more work required. So this will tell us a little more about, like, if there's necessary repairs and what those costs may be. So I think this may be the first step. So I would probably recommend to the council, if that's something you want to dive into a little bit more, let's kind of get this out of the way and have this kind of as a basis of some information. We can go back and look at the comp study and look at that a little closer and then see, okay, where do we want to go from here? Is there more information needed? Do we want to do some more? But this is more just regulatory requirements at this point.
Okay. Yeah, I just didn't know if there would be cost savings and piggybacking anything else onto it, but that's fine.
Alder Reed?
Oh, no, I think my question was just answered. Yeah, I was also just wondering if it made more sense to have even just a little refresher packet included with our information from the inspection, just to bring us back up to speed.
I'm more than happy to do that when we get the report for the inspection. I'm happy to just include a little summary memo that might capture some of that information for those that weren't part of or don't remember the comp study. We can kind of point out some of those key issues and maybe just summarize that for everybody, and that's easy enough for me to do that. We'll just include that in this task order, so if that helps.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Is everyone comfortable moving this forward? Okay, thank you. And then Jason, sidewalks for 2024 street and utility reconstruction.
All right, we're just checking these off, aren't we? So sidewalk tonight, and I apologize, I handed out some photo logs to you that were here when you arrived. I came a little early. I took these this morning and just wanted to kind of give you a visual reference of what I wanted to kind of discuss tonight. So a little bit of what is on this agenda item, and I talked to the mayor about this as well, is we've done these reconstruction projects historically. We have an ordinance that exists under Chapter 90, the subdivision ordinance, that says any new street shall have sidewalk on both sides. That's for new street construction. There are some people that believe that applies to reconstructions as well, because technically we're building a new street even though it exists. In the past, I believe the council has typically tried to always, if there wasn't sidewalk, install sidewalk. Now, with that being said, there's a few exceptions. Hibbert Street came along and we decided it was cost prohibitive to put sidewalk on both sides of the street from an easement standpoint, from a retaining wall grading issue, drainage issue, so we voted to go one side of the street. And then, as luck would have it, this year's project, Folsom Street, was the exact same issue. And one of the sides of the streets also had a large retaining wall, some very large trees, and some more difficult issues, cost issues that would raise the cost of the construction. And so the council had kind of directed me just to replace the sidewalk on one side of the street. In both cases, we have precedent for the special assessment where we've assessed that cost and we've split it up between the cost owners. So 50% of the cost is paid by the city and 25% is paid by residents on opposite sides of the street, because there's some benefit to the sidewalk on that street for both sides. So we do have kind of a model of doing this now, and we've done it a couple times. So as luck would have it, we picked two streets where we have sidewalks on one side of the street. So the first thing I thought was, well, we'll just put a new sidewalk on the opposite side of the street. Well, as I got out there and started kind of scoping this out when we put the proposal together, the task order, I started realizing that if you maybe just walk through these, let's take Selden, your packet for Selden first. You can kind of see what I did here is I just took photos and kind of drew in some red lines where the sidewalk would approximately go. I didn't look for property lines, but I just kind of measured off the back of curb and said, you know, these are pretty visual cues for you. So you can see on the first page of the Selden Street, you know, I have I have a fence that would be impacted. Now, is the fence technically in the right of way? I would guess it is. How it got there, I don't know. If you page through that, you're going to see we have some drainage issues to worry about on that same run of sidewalk. We have some grade differentials with some large landscaping. We have some large oak trees that theoretically, if we're damaging roots being too close, we might lose those large oak trees. And by the way, there are some beautiful oak trees on that stretch. So as you kind of page through there, we would also need a ramp up on Charles Street and a receiving ramp on the opposite side of the street, because there is no other sidewalk to tie it into. So we'd want a crossing there on Charles Street. So there's just some, I guess, encumbrances there that would be things that we would have to address with property owners. We'd have to have things removed. We'd have to install new sidewalk. We'd have to address grade differentials, drainage issues, and put in some ramps. I can do it. It's not a problem. But I wanted at least a little direction from you guys to say, yeah, it makes sense, let's do it here. Or if we're going to look at this and say, due to the impacts to the residents and some of the other issues, maybe we would stick with the belief that, you know, this is going to be a little bit more difficult to put in sidewalk, and we would revert back to kind of what we've used historically. So that's Selden. And just very similarly, I'll go through Richmond very quickly. You can see some landscaping, some fences. There's a large tree on the second page of the Richmond packet. That's a private tree. I believe that's on their property, and we'd have the sidewalk coming right by it. Again, you know, just something where we'd have to deviate the sidewalk from alignment probably, because we don't have the right to cut the tree down. The next page, we got a fence, some landscaping, and some more decorative trees. As we keep paging through there, you see a trampoline. So we're kind of slicing that sidewalk, which I'm assuming most people that don't have sidewalk believe that their yard goes to the curb. I've heard that before. It doesn't. They're utilizing it that way, so we would obviously be putting a sidewalk, be encumbering their yard in their mind. And then some landscaping, fencing, so on and so forth. Same thing on the last page. Ramps on both sides of Charles Street to receive the sidewalk there. And so, I wanted you guys to ask some questions, to maybe think about it. I don't need an answer today, but I do want to get it out there. I want to, because at some point we're going to have to start surveying, we're going to have to start talking to property owners, and getting a little direction on what the thought here is. Again, I'm fine with working these sidewalk additions in if you want them. It's just something I have to know if that's how you feel strongly about moving forward with that, or not encumbering those properties and just replacing the sidewalk on one side. So, any questions?
Alder Motive?
I don't have a question, but I'd just like to say my thoughts are that there's really wonderful sidewalks in this area of town, plenty of space to walk. I don't think that we should worry about disturbing what's there and the encumbrances. I think we should just let it go this time on both streets.
Alder Steiner?
I'm gonna have to kind of agree with that. There is sidewalk on one side, and since these aren't high traffic areas or residential areas, you're not really creating a whole bunch of a safety zone. And the impact that creating these sidewalks, just by these, I know there's not property lines really gauged out, but it would be rather significant to every resident there. I mean, look at some of these lines are cutting right through their middle of their driveway. Yeah, it doesn't always go all the way to the end, but everything would have to be tore up just to put in a sidewalk, and I can almost guarantee nobody's going to enjoy that.
Alder Gray?
Yeah, similar sentiments, especially on Selden Street. There is zero reason, in my opinion, to put a sidewalk there on Selden Street. Richmond Street, I'm honestly a little bit more torn on because it would connect to more sidewalks, because there are sidewalks that it would meet up with on that side of the street if we put in a sidewalk, so it would be more contiguous on Richmond Street. So there would be a greater value on Richmond Street, and it does appear to impact less on Richmond Street than it would on Selden Street. Selden Street, in my opinion, it's a no-brainer. There's absolutely zero reason to put a sidewalk there. Richmond Street, I don't know. I think that is something that we should look at a little bit closer and discuss, because there is contiguous pathways, there is less impact. It might not be a bad thing for Richmond Street.
I don't think Selden shows that, Ian, but if you look south of Lewis, south of Lewis, there is a receiving ramp. Yes, that goes down to the south, much like the first page of Richmond. There is one on Selden as well. So I think it's a very similar situation. We'd be connecting Charles Street with the south side of Lewis, sidewalks that run in the same direction. So, but again, remember, there is sidewalk on one side now. So,
Any other thoughts?
Would-
Marion?
Jason had contacted me, and I actually took a drive over back, a couple weeks ago or
Yeah.
whatever, and Selden Street, those are some really nice oak trees, and I really hate to see those get damaged to the point where it would end up killing them. 'Cause, Richmond Street, there's areas there too where potential. Well, I guess it's just with the private tree, but
Yeah, a little less impact.
a little less. Yeah, you're right. But yeah, definitely, Selden, I would not want to see those oak trees disturbed.
Anybody else? Okay. I guess, Jason, what do you, we're not making a decision on this tonight, we're gonna think about this a little bit longer? Or,
well, I'm happy if you guys want to discuss it and just bring it back up maybe on another cow, or at some point maybe make a decision to give me a little direction. It's not critical right now. It'll be something where we'll start reaching out to homeowners. We won't probably have a public informational meeting until early fall. So there's a little bit of time here, but, these questions are going to be asked, right? Homeowners are going to start wondering, okay, if we're going to be rebuilding the road, what does this look like? And so we just want a little direction. So again, I'm not looking for you guys to give me a decision now. I just want to get it in front of you and at least have some consensus, because I don't want to be making a decision that's not fitting with what you guys would like to see. And, you know, if we are going to do it, then, and I know I'm not going to get Christmas cards from those people, but I just need to know that. So, like I said, I'll do whatever this group wants, but I just want to make sure that, you know, we're doing it. I do think we have precedent for doing it both ways, historically, but, you know, I think it's just really based off of kind of some of the impacts and how we deem that, you know, to the project, so.
Alder Gray?
So, a question would be, is there an alternative to putting in a second sidewalk? Like, would it be less of an impact if the street was widened a little bit and we had like a bike lane on that side? Like,
Yeah, I mean, now's the opportunity to do it. We certainly could.
like that could be a good thing. I've heard a lot of constituents talk about how unsafe it was to ride a bike around town. Like, maybe if it's less of an impact on the trees and the property owners, a bike lane on one side and keep the sidewalk on the other side.
Keep in mind, it is one block. It's 300 feet. So the
That's
bike
true.
lane wouldn't really connect to anything.
That's
You would
true.
just have a little bit wider street for people to maybe walk along the edge. But at that point, do they just cross and walk on the opposite side too?
Yeah,
So-
that's-
And then
that's
it's
true. It
cost,
needs to
right?
be a larger
You're adding the
reconstruction
extra
for-
bike lane 6 feet. Now we're paying for asphalt and, you know, additional cost to build the road, which is going to drive up the project cost, so.
Yeah, I suppose that would have to be a bit more of a holistic look of future bike
Yeah.
paths. So it was just a.
Alder Steiner?
I would still say that most of us are all in agreements that it's not 100% necessary. So I'd rather not spend the resources trying to dig into something that is not really going to be a major benefit to anyone and probably going to upset homeowners if you're going to start cutting into what they believe is their land. It just seems unnecessary and reckless to just, hey, we'll just spend money and see if you want to do it and then not do it. When we already know that most of the people there probably won't, and we're already kind of undecided, we don't really need that too.
Alder Finkler?
I just want to say I agree with Alder Steiner. I also think that we should not be tearing down any very nice mature trees and, yeah, just not disrupting the owners.
So what I'm hearing is we don't need this on either of these streets then? Okay. All right, perfect. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Next item on our agenda is to discuss request from the Recreation Department for maintenance items at the Scout Cabin. And
I can start that off.
go ahead.
Because I'm on the rec board. We discussed that. I've discussed it with Uriah here. He's part of the scout troop and the cabin is in a very bad state. The roof is leaking. The gutters have not been maintained, so there's pooling of water around the edges, which means the foundation's probably not doing it in a very good mode either. There's a lot of maintenance issues, and it has been brought up that the scouts may just vacate that property because it's becoming unsafe. I personally would hate to see that lost. The scout cabin is one of those unique things that you don't find in other towns, and our troop is small, but it produces a lot of Eagle Scouts, and that's not an easy thing to do. Eagle Scouts are I think 11% of the entire nation of scouting make it to Eagle, and our small community produces a lot of that. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that we have a building that we don't have to borrow, rent, or ask, or anything like that. We have a building specifically dedicated to the Scout program. And what we discussed is allowing the Scouts to basically fundraise or do some small things or fundraise for the big things to help maintain that in lieu of what we had as the MOU the past year, that they have to pay X amount for each head on the program itself. If they're going to be maintaining the building, that would cover that cost in maintenance. So basically what we're doing here is just asking for almost permission for the go-ahead to allow the Scouts to do this program. And I think if Uriah has some details as to what major things can help, he can help that. I'm not sure what he's got up there.
Hi, thanks for having me tonight. My name is Uriah Monday. I'm the committee chair for Troop 99 here in town. I guess I saw this on the agenda. I was made aware of it. I saw it was kind of there wasn't a real tight scope involved here, so I guess we can have a little bit of a conversation. I guess I'll start by, Adam was saying that there is quite a lot of deferred maintenance on the scout cabin. The last major renovation was done in the early 90s, to my understanding. That was done with a lot of volunteer work and effort. Some of the brief history of the building is that there's a plaque right on the front, 1939. I don't know, I tend to go right in the door. I don't look up when I go there, but so it's been in our community a long time. The refurbishment 30 years ago involved some structural repairs. It also put if you've ever been inside, there's a large meeting area, and then there's a little bit of a smaller area, and then there's a kitchen in back, and that was actually part of the old trap shooting club, if I recall the history right. But that was tacked on to make the building a little bit larger. Roofing was done at that time. I believe some of the window work was done, and some sealing, not sealing, painting, some of those types of items. Since then, as Adam has said, buildings do what buildings do, and that's the toll of time has taken its toll. So at this point in time, our troop, the Cub Scouts, and I believe also one Girl Scout troop uses that building regularly. We do our due diligence in keeping it clean as teenage boys do. Cleanliness is in the Scout law, but it's not everybody's strong suit. But we also try to do our best in some of the things like bringing to the attention of the city that there was an issue with the furnace last year. And I know we've tinkered with some repairs on some of the ceiling fans. Right now there's an attic there, and the attic ladder needs some replacing. So we've rigged that up as best we can to keep it safe. And then if we need to get up there and access it, we got to remember to bring a ladder. Those are some of what I would call the moderate things. The more serious things do involve the roof needing repair. The wall that is nearest the ball field side is bowing out pretty substantially. I should say that the architectural composition of the building is, I believe it's telephone poles. So that's what it gives it its log cabin-y look, which is a great look, but not always long-term structurally sound. The floor's uneven. I've been down in that crawl space with another leader a couple of times, and some of the floor jacks need replacing or being added to. I'm a little uncertain what building codes were followed back in 1990, whatever. You mentioned the drainage issue, right? Yep. I know that that crawl space does flood. I've been down there while it's flooded too. So anyway, I guess I could go on with a litany of things. The upshot is that Scouts are very happy to do the volunteer work for some of the things that are within our realm of ability to do. So if it were all general maintenance things, there's teenagers who are willing to learn and work. There are parents who are willing to help. There are people around the community that support scouting that we could call on, and I'm sure we would round up quite a lot of help to do that. There are things that I do think are outside of the realm of simple volunteer work. Even if we got quite a crowd of people, there's expertise that's needed. There's equipment operation that would be needed, and planning, right? I mean, we can come up with a list of things, but then there's what order do we do this in? Not only in order of priority but what makes sense. Are you going to replace some of the windows on a wall that's got structural problems? You need to take care of the structural problems first, and then take care of the window after. So, anyway, I guess that's maybe a state of the cabin. We had the state of the station before. We got the state of the cabin now. I'm willing to comment more, take questions, or kind of, I guess, just have a discussion about maybe what some of the next steps are. To be honest with you, I think this is a fairly long-term project from a lot of the things I've seen there. But God willing, Scouts will be around still for a long time in town, so we got that going for us.
Alder Gray.
So it's my understanding that this building is exclusively used by the Scouts? No one else utilizes this, rents
So,
this?
yeah, it's governed by an MOU between the different scouting groups in the city. We pay a nominal fee each year, as do the other groups. We also have a sort of hours of community service obligation. At this time, it's used exclusively by Scout programs. We've talked with Amy Jo in recent years, kind of each fall as we renew this MOU, about the idea of having non-exclusive use, right?
Right. So
Scouts, Scouts have
what
never
I'm getting
claimed
at,
exclusive use on it, but
not to cut you off,
Sure.
but thank you for answering my question.
Yeah.
What I'm getting at is it a building that the city needs to own? Would the Scouts like to purchase it for $1 if the city would sell it for $1?
So,
Like, is it a liability that we need? Some of my large concerns are, you mentioned telephone poles as structural. I know,
Yeah, going
I don't
this
know
way,
how
not this
old
way.
those telephone poles are, but what is the material that we use to seal things like that with?
creosote.
Exactly. Are they creosote? That is incredibly unsafe and should not be inside of a building. Is the building even viable? Is it safe? Like,
Those are some of the same questions I've got.
yeah, so,
So-
I don't know if there is a path of repairing something like that, if its structure is based on creosote-soaked beams and logs, like, is that something that we need to repair? Is that something or is that something that needs to be removed? Is it something that the Scouts would just like to own? Is it something that the city wants to continue to not maintain? I think this is a much larger discussion than whether or not the Scouts should be raising funds to maintain it. I think it's a question of, should that building exist? Should the city own it if it continues to exist? Because that's alarming. I had no idea that it was in that sort of state or that it was constructed in that sort of manner.
That's part of why I'm here, for a little bit of enlightenment.
Yeah, I don't know if, like, knowing all that, if I'd even be that comfortable selling it to the Scouts if they wanted it, to be honest. Like, I don't know if that's a safe structure to maintain. I don't know if we should be raising funds to maintain it rather than raising funds to demolish it and put something else there, to be honest.
How do we find out, I mean, would it be a building inspection or what, in order to find out if it's even inhabitable? Are we running a risk if we were to sell it? I mean, I think those are good questions, and we need to figure out how to vet that.
Yeah, I think we opened up a much bigger discussion.
Alder Reed.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I love that the city owns a structure for scouting purposes. I doubt that they would, that volunteer troops would be interested in owning it, even if it was in somewhat better shape. It's still just a lot of liability on the maintenance. Yeah, this is just, I agree, such a big discussion. I'm definitely wondering if we need to have a building inspector look it over sooner rather than later to give us a list of the situation.
Alder Franklin.
Do the Scouts have somewhere else to go? Because what I'm worried about here is you're coming to us to, be like, hey, we want to volunteer and we want to improve this building. And now we're like, oh, maybe we should just tear it down on you. So I'm a little feeling like
I'm way ahead of you. Anybody
not a
who
nice
knows me
person right
knows
now.
I'm pretty clinical. I was talking to somebody last night, and I said there's probably 8 or 10 different ways we can slice this, right? Not to completely be unemotional about it, but that's kind of sometimes what leadership takes, is to take a good hard look. So, I guess without getting too far out of bounds, but, you know, the idea that we may not have a viable building, right? That comes into good planning, right? What's this possibility? If we didn't have a viable building, we would have to seek some other location. I do feel that I expressed this yesterday by, you know, if anybody having a home, right, really feels like they belong in a spot. And that's really something, like Adam was saying, that our troop has. When we have people from other troops come visit, they're like, this is really cool, because they don't have it. They meet in a church basement, or they meet in a community center, or they meet other places, right? And I get the feeling that by and large, the places that they meet, they're consistent in, like they're not bopping around, you know, and they're not doing the organizational equivalent of couch surfing, but they don't have a spot like that, okay? So from that standpoint, having a home base is really a great thing. If we didn't have that, yes, we would have to reach out to a church in the community, or meet in the community center, or come up with some other plan. And we've talked about how we would do that, right? Sort of the logistics of doing that. So we understand that that's a possibility. We'd prefer that not be the outcome. We'd prefer that we find a way to keep that building viable. I've even thought, well, you know, do we keep that building viable, or do we come up with something that's got a similar feel, right? A replacement project. How does that look, right? Is it a city building, right? I understand that this is something that a community organization is using at very low cost to us, right? So I'm not oblivious to that point either. I guess one of the things I'll have you consider, though, is that, you know, is it worth it to the community to have an organization like Scouts be part of it and accommodate that? So I guess that's always the position an organization, right, needs to take when we're at meetings like this, where we understand that by and large the cost is being borne by the community as a whole. So I feel like I started rambling a little bit, but that's part of the 8 or 10 different ways we can slice it, right? So.
I was around when the utility poles were donated for use, and they were at the age that it was the bottom portion of those poles that contained the creosote, because that's what was in the ground. Though the butts is what they're called, were cut off, and then it was, you know, the regular
That's
the
good
pole.
to know, 'cause
Yeah.
that worried me a little bit.
Yeah.
Good, that supports my nose. I don't smell a lot of creosote there, and it's pretty distinctive, so.
Yeah, you would, if it
Yeah,
was
you'd
there,
know.
you'd be smelling it, so.
Alder Franklin?
Sorry.
I guess my opinion is that I would like to see this building stay, and I would like to see the troops have an opportunity to make improvements to the building. And it's not like, there's a lot of people that are passionate about the Scouts, and I believe that there will be quite a few volunteers that would come out to help. And I don't know, I just can't get behind you coming and proposing doing maintenance on the building as a troop, and then all of a sudden saying, hey, I think we need to assess it to tear it down. Now, if the troop's gonna be in there and it's gonna crumble on them and, you know, and something like that, I think we'd be having a different conversation, but I think we should let the troop, you know, handle some of these maintenance items.
Alder Motive?
I would like to see the Scouts remain. It's not a question of the organization. I am worried about safety at this point with some of the repairs I'm hearing that are needed. And so what I would like to see before we move forward is either an inspection report or a list of things that need to be completed so that we're sure that our Scouts here in town are safe. And that's my biggest issue.
Alder Gray?
That's mostly what I was going to say. Like, when you mentioned the telephone poles, my fear of creosote, like, I don't want to be giving scouts cancer. Like, when you mentioned the wall bowing out, like, how structurally sound is this? Like, it's in far worse condition than what I realized. I would hate for the scouts to raise money on something that might not be viable. I think the city needs to ensure that this building is viable and something that we can rehab and do for the future before you should raise money, unless the scouts want to raise money to ascertain that status. I think the city needs to, I think there needs to be a commitment somewhere for us to actually ascertain the viability of this structure before anything happens, and that's going to cost money. That is not a free thing. So that's something that the council has to agree to actually do and pay for, because I'm not comfortable the scouts, like, the description was a lot worse than I expected. I'm really not comfortable children being in it in its current state, if my mental image is how you painted it. I think we need to assess that building sooner than later before anything moves forward any direction. Like, I'm not saying I want to rip it down. I'm saying I need to make sure this is safe. Like, it's...
We meet every Monday, so come on by.
Well, I'm not the person to inspect.
Well, if you want a true visual, that's the basis of my invitation. So, you know, seeing it for your own eyes.
I mean, the chemicals from creosote, I think there's tests that need to be done aside from structure. Based on the materials used, they could be incredibly unsafe.
Alder Finkler?
So I was in this building just 2-3 years ago when we had the ice skating rink, and that's where you rented skates. I mean, to me, I didn't feel like the building was going to cave in on me. Again, that was a couple years ago. Sure, it was an old building. It's an old cabin. Like, that's just the feel you're going to get. I mean, is it where you feel uncomfortable being in the building? I mean, I just felt like I was in an old cabin when I was there.
I don't feel uncomfortable.
Right. So I just want to make sure that...
I speak for myself, of course, right?
Yeah,
Different people have different
I
levels.
don't perceive you painting the picture that this is a danger. I see this more as you're trying to keep it from being a danger.
Yeah, I also work in infrastructure, and anybody who works in infrastructure knows that infrastructure doesn't heal itself over time.
Right.
So having a timely conversation about its current state and knowing that it only goes down without some attention. So I think the crawling around in the crawl space episode was sort of mine and the other leaders helped to get a visual of how safe it truly was. And it's viable at the moment, but it does need to be looked at.
I would have to agree with Alder Finkler. I am not interested in seeing it torn down either. My concern for liability is, I love the idea of the scouts taking ownership and being involved. My son is a scout. There's probably a lot that can be done with merit badges there, but in terms of liability working on it, who are the volunteers going to be who are working with them? I'd like to see a list of projects and then who would be in charge, basically a level of safety and mitigating,
Right, and that's some of the logistics that I'm talking about, right? We can come up with some amount of labor, but if it's a city-owned building, right, we talked about an inspection, we didn't talk about, but something that's occurred to me is, it's a public building. There are building codes pertaining specifically to public buildings. So while work volunteers and those volunteers be given tasks to execute, the planning, the costing, the understanding of what really it's going to take to make it a safe building, I think really is beyond the boundaries of volunteer work. You might find a volunteer who's willing to do that, but that's, gratis, and how long is that going to take? So,
Alder Reed.
Oh, thank you. I feel like we're kind of having two separate discussions. One is trying to figure out the future and viability of the building. I hope it's good. And the other one is whether the Scouts should pay a small fee or it should all be in work done. So I'm just wondering for that question up front, do we have a preference?
Alder Steiner?
As far as the work that can be done, obviously there's going to be certain things that volunteers can't do. But there are certain things like a simple paint job for something that needs new fresh coat of paint or something simple like that that can be done. As far as the major projects, we can go through a whole lot of steps to try to fundraise to mitigate costs of doing these things, because as you look at it since the 90s, that building really hasn't been touched. And which is kind of indicative of a lot of buildings that the city owns where they're not being maintained the way they should be. So you have organizations like CHLPC putting in all this work to do this, to make sure these buildings are still there. What we're doing is basically the same thing. We want the Scouts to have this home base. We want them to have this building because it does bring the whole program together for this community. It takes a lot of work. And you look around that building, if you just take a visual assessment, there's things that need to be solved. Is it going to collapse tomorrow? No, it's not in that sad of a state. But if you don't address these things, they will come up. And we're just looking for more of a way to get to that point where we can fix it, as opposed to seeing a bunch of Scouts out there with hammers and nails clawing around on the roof. You're not going to see that. That's just not feasible or liable for that. So it's more or less just get this thing going. Can we get this thing so we can fix it? Because that's what we're looking for. If studies need to be done, I know that our old DPW director has been in there. He has looked at it. I don't know if that list of things that he has is still available to anyone. I don't think an actual study was actually done. I'm not sure if that is available, but I'm fine with us going through and looking at what are the things we need to tackle first, and then we can pass off to the Scouts and say, hey, this is what we got. Can we work towards this? I think that's more or less the more progressive way to look at this and say, let's start here, as opposed to deciding, should we even have this building? That seems a bit far off in the future because, like I said, it's not going to collapse tomorrow, but without any kind of attention, it won't be there, and there could be dangers to the Scouts and all these kids that are going through this building.
Alder Gray?
So I was never advocating to tear it down. What I'm saying is we need to ascertain the viability of the building before anyone does any repairs, before the Scouts waste their time raising money potentially or making repairs. There is no sense in painting a building if the building isn't viable. There's no sense in replacing a window if the wall is going to fall. There's no sense in doing anything if it's not viable. We need to ascertain the safety and viability of the building before we do anything. I am all for it remaining. I'm all for the Scouts doing it. I'm all for it. I mean, if they want to fundraise and actually do a lot of these things and actually upkeep it, it's one of the only ways that a lot of these buildings do actually get maintained, unfortunately. And like you mentioned with the CHLPC doing it in other buildings, it is the unfortunate reality. But I think it is, if that is the path that we want to go down, that it sounds like council wants the Scouts to be able to continue using it. What I'm saying is we need to have a professional in there and ascertain the viability and safety of that building before we do anything else. Some of the things that were brought up today are incredibly alarming. And it's not just structural. There are potential chemicals. There are a lot of very alarming things that potentially children should not be exposed to. We need to ensure that that is not the case and that there is long-term viability of this building before we do anything else. Like you mentioned, you have to start at the foundation. You can't just put paint on it. This is the foundation. We need to ascertain the viability.
Alder Motive?
In addition to what Ian's saying, I think this is also a good time to do that report as we're starting our budget season as well. Perhaps there's something we can do in 2024 to help with needed costs. I mean, it's a city-owned building. We have some responsibilities, and without knowing what those responsibilities are and the cost, we really can't give the right answer. And so what I'm requesting is that we go ahead and get a professional inspection report so that we have a better starting base to know how we can be helpful and how we can protect our youth.
Is that a direction that the group as a whole is comfortable with?
I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
Chris, do you know what we need you to do now?
Yeah, I can work with Adam and you said the rec department is kind of charges. Yeah, I will talk to CCC building, when I was in Shorewood, we did the same thing. It was we did an assessment and we shared the cost with the person who leased the building, and but we knew what was needed. So I think that's a really smart idea to get an assessment.
It's easier to fundraise too for specific things.
Yeah.
Like if you can fundraise, do a fundraiser XYZ for this, knowing is easier.
Right. Yeah, I was gonna ask one thing and volunteer another. I'd ask that the inspection or assessment also come with some, I realize it's probably gonna be a very vague cost of correction, like what it might take, if that can get built in to study. The thing I'll volunteer is I'm happy to help with scoping a proposal, an RFP, so.
Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda tonight is discuss trick-or-treat date 2023. Oh, I'm sorry. Alder Finkler, did you have a question?
Are we discussing? Yeah, okay, good. I just wasn't sure if I could start the conversation. So I guess my biggest question is why? Why do we want to move this to Sunday instead of Saturday? I know last year when it was moved away from Saturday, I heard a lot of grumblings and, upset people because it was on a school night, on the night before work. A lot of adults like to take their kids out trick-or-treating and they get together with their friends. And I guess what I'm not seeing in this document is why the request for the change from Saturday.
I think historically it has always been Sunday from time immemorial in Columbus, even from when I was a kid, unless Halloween itself fell on the weekend. It's just always been on Sunday. And we've had debates every year about whether we should do like other communities do and do it on Halloween in the evening, but then you run into problems with the parents who do like to go trick-or-treating with their children who have to race home from work to get it accomplished, and it being also still a school night. And
I guess I'm confused because it says traditionally it's been on Saturday and they're trying to move it to Sunday, and you're saying that it's traditionally on Sunday. Ever since I've lived here, it's been Saturday except for last year?
I remember a lot of Sundays.
I mean, I haven't lived here as long as probably you guys have, but in this document, it says traditionally Saturday. So that's what I'm referencing, and I want to know why it's being requested to move to Sunday. That's all.
Yeah, that was backwards.
I guess I would want to know more information without Amy Jo being here. I know last year we were competing with a play at the high school. We were competing with a football playoff game that happened to be on a Saturday because of the distance that the opposing team was coming from. I'm sure that there are some reasons for what they're requesting this time, but I don't have any information as to what those might be. I don't know if anybody else does. Alder Gray.
So to be clear, they're requesting it to be on Saturday.
Sunday.
Okay, they're requesting it to be on Sunday instead of Saturday. Okay, yeah, that is confusing. Yeah, I honestly, whatever makes the most sense. I have very little input on this. In my opinion, it would just be on the 31st, which is a Tuesday, and it's kids can go trick-or-treating after school. But for me, whatever makes the most sense. If there's competing events, no.
I have no idea whose light was on
Reed is
first.
first.
so-
Okay, thank you. Oh, I mean, my preference would be leaning towards Saturday that we've gone with most of the past couple years. But yeah, I would just need to know if there's a reason that Sunday was preferred. If there are already a major high school what have you event in town on Saturday, just the why before we make a decision.
Alder Steiner?
I honestly don't care. I mean, I just want to look at this as, we had a big discussion about this last year, and it turned into a big, long argument, and is it really that much of an ordeal? It's on the weekend one way or the other. So it's just trick or treating. I say, whichever way the rec wants to set it, let's just set it that way.
Much more simply put.
Yeah, I agree with Adam. I mean, this is not council's biggest decision, and the worst thing that happens is if we, the way I see it from what we're hearing is we have two choices. We either put it back on the rec department to just make the decision, or we move this forward to the next council meeting, assuming that they will provide an answer for us by the next council meeting. It's simple.
Alder Finkler?
I have a dumb question, but why is council deciding this anyway?
That's a good question.
I mean, we don't pick the national night out for Chief Weiner, do we? I mean, I'm sure it's a national thing, but whatever. That's like just my example from tonight. But like, I don't know why council's even making this decision.
I agree.
Alder Gray?
I mean, I do not disagree with Alder Finkler at all on that note, but yeah, I think we should just move it forward. If there's more information, whatever, I'm perfectly fine with going with the rec department's decision. Perhaps we should move forward delegating this decision annually to the recreational director so that council doesn't have to make this decision every year, because
This is not city business.
like, yeah, it is kind of silly. Yeah. So, like, maybe just in the future, the rec director can deal with this. Can we get that on the next agenda? Like, just.
I agree with Ian. I would love to have it moved to then the rec department, because then also it will save the alders from getting emails after Halloween on upset parents on what date that it occurs. Well, at least we can respond with, please reach out to the rec department.
So everybody is comfortable moving this forward to the next regular meeting?
And moving it forward with the recommendation that it goes to
Yes.
the rec director.
Okay. Next on the agenda is review RFPs for Tower Drive, 1400 Park Avenue, and 1149 West James Street. And I think, Chris, you had some information on ARPA clarification that we wanted to start with?
Well, I just wanted three things.
Sure.
That maybe not new, but just to bring up on the RFPs. Not that they all matter to this at this point, but we did receive a copy of a letter that the Dingy property, I always forget, nominated the property as on the National Register. We didn't do that. It was the potential purchaser in the RFP. And we haven't looked at what that means. I don't think it means anything right now, because I don't think it does. But I just wanted to let you know that came up today. We did research the questions of the ARPA funds, so I did give you a memo. If you have any questions on that, and we've had some interest, as a lot of times when you do an RFP like this for property, people kind of look at it late. So we have some interest outside the RFP process. Not that you can or should do anything about that, but I think it's a point of interest. You should know that people kind of looked at it after the fact and said, oh, we might be interested. So that's just a point of interest, but thought you should know that as well. So those are the three things that I know. If you want me to summarize a few other things that I thought of today to help start the conversation, these are staff's, again, maybe not a recommendation, just but our thoughts. The Western Avenue and Tower Drive, we have 2 potential RFPs. I think we need to, I mean, I don't think you have enough information to really make a decision on those 2 tonight. I think those, we have to do a little more study, maybe interview the respondents, things of that sort, whatever, but just kind of an overall bigger thought. On the farm property, we had 1 respondent. I think it's a risk-reward type of discussion. You know, we get our money back. We get a potentially nice project there. There's little risk, but, you know, the rewards aren't huge, right? You know, the other one, we have a lot of holding cost out there. If we go and try to find a developer for it for a certain area, we got a holding cost, who knows how long, but we might get a nice project. So I think you need to look at it as a risk-reward thing. What, you know, what's right now, where is our priorities? Is it, you know, let's get this over with, make this as nice as possible, get our money back, reinvest that money. You know, that might be a thing. And the commercial one, as we said last week, we actually were, you know, and I did tell the RFP person this, that who submitted, I said, you know, the subsidy's high, the use is not the ideal for that property, that's more of an industrial use. If you remember, they did propose a similar project in the industrial park, which I think is a terrific project, but not on a major street. And, you know, the discussion tonight, of course, on the potential for a public safety building, I think is, you know, relevant to your discussion as well. So those are kind of Brandon's overall thoughts on this as you start your discussion. Hopefully that helps kick it off.
Alder Finkler, I saw your light first.
It's been on the whole time. So I'm going to start with the easy one, or I'm going to start with 2 easy ones. Tower Drive, definitely more discussion needs to occur there. I think both RFPs need a little bit of discussion more on that one. The old countryside property, I 100% believe that it should be a new fire department. That's what the plan has been for a very long time. And I feel like the one proposal that we got on that one is just not a right location for it. We need to do something about a new fire department. And now the Dingy property. So since I've been on council, this has been one of the hot topics, right? So we have been shuffling this along and having a different excuse to push it along every single time. It's first, okay, well, we have a vision, which I still have yet to figure out what that vision was, but that's beside the point. Then we have the RFPs out there. Okay, let's wait till we hear back from the RFPs. Now we got the RFPs back and we got the responses back from that. And now we have all this ARPA risk issue, but then we also have, oh, now some other people may be interested in it. Okay, we just, like, my opinion, and I'm gonna like try to not get too angry here, we just need to move on from this property, okay? The couple that would like this property has a very beautiful idea for this property. We're gonna get our money back. Let's reinvest it somewhere else. Why are we wasting our energy on this, okay? The people that are very bent on it being a developed area, whatever they want it developed, just move on, okay? We gotta have passion elsewhere. We just need to sign on the dotted line, let the couple have it, let them develop how they're gonna wanna develop it. They're gonna hook up to our stormwater. They're gonna hook up to, you know, I don't know what all the technical terms are. You read them too. Everybody came prepared. They read it. So, I mean, the deal has gotten thicker. They're clearly passionate about this property. They have taken it to put it on historical registries. I mean, at what point is it just evil to try to stop this? At least that's my opinion, and I'll shut up now because I'm just going to keep going.
Alder Gray.
Oh, Stein.
Alder Stein.
Looking at all these, I don't think we really should accept any of the properties for Tower Drive, for Countryside. I'm still on the fence with the Dingy property. I think we rushed into things a little bit faster with getting proposals. We didn't get a whole lot of developers interested in this. I think we can start over, starting with an RFI, trying to get more relationships with developers to look at Columbus, trying to build some kind of rapport so we can get these things going, and then eventually get back to an RFP. Looking at the Dingy property, which has been in my mind for far longer than I really care, and I'm kind of sick of dealing with it too. But there's a lot of things that need to be done, and if we're going to sell it to a private residence, as far as getting our money back, we won't. We're going to lose money on this ordeal one way or the other, because the cost of doing a lot of this stuff is going to be resources on the taxpayer dollar one way or the other. And I had my beautiful realtor look over the contract because she likes doing that type of thing, and I have a whole list of myriad of things that need to be addressed. I can go over some of those. One thing that I have looked into is we need to have an appraisal done on that property if we're going to sell it, because it creates a liability on us if we undersell it under appraisal. I've looked on the League of Municipalities website, and it clearly states that if we're going to sell it to a private residence, we need to have our own appraisal done on that, because if they're asking to pay for $580 for it and it appraises out at $625, we're opening ourselves up to legal liability for the taxpayers. Also, the other aspect is in their contract is they don't have any gap percentage. So if it does appraise below that, are they going to cover that cost? What is the insurance to cover that cost? As far as looking at, I don't know if those are still current documents, but a pre-approval letter is already past its due date. So we don't know if their financing is actually in order to continue on this project. There are a lot of other things in there that are just contractually that need to be looked at and taken out, and I'm probably not the best person to go looking through that and explaining all those things, but at the same time, there's a lot of issues with their just contract in general. As far as building anything on here, I've talked to a developer today that he says it's not really a viable process to develop or do anything with, just connecting the sewer lines. He doesn't know exactly where they are, but it seems like that might be a major cost issue that even developing it would be an issue. So I'm kind of on the fence as to where we should be with this. But as far as going through this process, we have to get an appraisal, which is going to slow things down. And with anything in government, it takes time because you're contending with 7 different voices here and all these different things. But as far as developing the other properties or finding anything to do with them, we need more information on what is viable for those properties, and to get developers who want to put X, Y, and Z, whatever on there, to actually get some interest in doing these things. I think it's necessary for us to take a little bit more time to do this process, because when we purchased this, we were all hot and bothered with the issue that came up and the people that were excited about it. We want to just get this thing done, and I think we rushed into it a bit more than we should have, a bit more recklessly than we should have. So I think we should really look back and start over again.
Alder Reed.
Oh, thank you. The only part I'm going to agree with from Adam was that we were reckless. That I would very much concur. We rushed, we didn't research, we didn't think very hard at the time. I was just very, very disappointed with how the whole process went this past winter. Anywho, I would feel extremely disingenuous getting hung up on the assessment for the Dingy property. The Dingy appraisal, knowing that they would have had fairly recent appraisals, less than a year old. And also when we have another offer for lands that we paid, $700,000 for, a different offer, they're asking to pay $1. I mean, I know that's not private, but we really can't get too hung up on the private aspect of it. I feel that we are so lucky that we have a group willing to take on this property, to renew it while keeping its historical significance. I feel like we couldn't have asked for anything better. My only question is, since we have this whole ARPA funds kerfuffle, what funds does the city need to use to fund the property and then for reselling it. That's my only question, comments.
Alder Gray?
I mean, yeah, there's a lot to unpack, so I'll do low-hanging fruit to start with. I think the previous Ford store, we do definitely need to go to more of it. We need more interest in it. I think there is much higher and better uses for that property. I think we definitely need to do it. I'm still really torn on Tower Drive because that is where I envision the fire station, because Ford store was never, no matter how much people want it to be, it was never a viable property for the fire station. And we've gone over those reasons before, so I'm not going to beat a dead horse. You can't want something into existence. But Tower Drive is a viable property for a fire station. As far as Dingy goes, I think the RFP process was rushed. I think Alder Reed was alluding to purchasing it being rushed, even though she voted in the affirmative when we were purchasing it. You were very much for purchasing it.
No, she wasn't.
No, not after we had already purchased it. Making the original contract, and when we were doing the original contract, before we knew someone else also made a bid, after we already had a signed contract, then you were against it. But before we had a signed contract, you were definitely for it. But that's beside the point. Every single member of the council was for purchasing it before anyone knew that there was a second bidder, because we had no idea that there was a second bidder.
Yeah.
Well, it is because she brought it up. No. The problem with that property is, I think a lot of the controversy that was stirred up by the proposed buyers scared away a lot of people that would want to develop it. I don't think we had a fair shake on actually going to RFP, or more of even an RFI on it. We did rush that portion of the process, and I don't think that a lot of the builders were comfortable, a lot of developers weren't comfortable because they knew the backlash they would face from Columbus residents when they put in a bid, or if they were the ones to demolish a barn. I do believe that the majority of the council wants to go that direction, so the most we can do is mitigate how that happens. The current proposal isn't sufficient to meet all ARPA standards, in my opinion. And we can play the shell game and pretend we didn't buy this with ARPA funds, but I don't believe that is morally sound. The proposal needs to meet, it needs to mitigate all of it needs to do something to meet ARPA satisfaction. So whether that is mitigating all of the blight on the property within the next period of time, like, we need a proposal that actually does some sort of benefit for the city, not just selling it. That does not meet ARPA funds. We are throwing away $500,000 by just selling it. That's silly.
Alder Motive?
Regarding the Countryside Ford, I do not think that this is a viable proposal for it at all. I'll also say that, given past research, it's also not a large enough property for a fire station, yet we keep going back there. And we would put a squished building and squished facilities in there for the fire department. Plus, we don't have approval from the DOT for that to be used as emergency exits. Actually, they have said no, that the fire trucks cannot exit onto that street. So there's quite a bit that needs to be discussed there. I think that Valito Homes currently has quite a few projects open and proposed in other places, and the Countryside is not the place to put it. Regarding the Tower Drive, I think it's worth some more research on it. However, I'm not real thrilled about apartments being in that area. If it was more towards townhouses and like property values, I would be more for it. Last and the hardest one for all of us is the Dingy property. it does, as you put it, feel evil. I love the passion that's there from the guys who really want this. I really, really appreciate that, and I love that you've fallen in love with our town. However, we are elected to make the decisions that are best for this city. And one of the things that I don't feel this council has done a good job at is looking long-term. If we're to look at the risk and reward of the dingy project as proposed here for the lavender farm, the risk is too high to accept this. There's no timelines, there's a lot open. I don't agree that it fits all the ARPA guidelines, and we have no guarantees that this money is going to be funneled back into the city if the business is successful. If. Whereas if we can put a development in there of good housing, we know that in roughly 20 years, I mean, I could be off a couple years here and there on when the return will be, we know that we'll start accruing property tax, and it will be better in the long run for this city. Thank you.
Alder Finkler.
I just want to comment that the response to the RFP is not a contract. My experience in RFPs is that the RFP, the proposal, and a contract all turns into one document that's utilized. I don't know, it may be different at the city level, but that is how it is at the state level. So this is in no way, shape, or form a contract. It is purely a proposal.
Nobody has said it is.
Adam said it was.
No, I was
a
going over the
contract.
purchase contract, not the RFP.
Well, we're discussing the RFP.
It was included with the packet.
Okay, well, we're discussing the RFPs, and it's not a contract. Also, I believe an assessment is just another stall tactic, which is frustrating. The infrastructure costs for that property, it was already estimated millions. And now all of a sudden, we're experts on ARPA funds when we purchased this property originally with ARPA funds, hid it from the citizens of the city, and we really didn't understand the ARPA funds to start off with, but now all of a sudden we're experts at it, so I find that a little frustrating. And then also, naysaying the lavender part of it, isn't it, and I can't remember where it is it Beaver Dam that's got the peony farm that now brings in just a boatload of people? And also putting a bed and breakfast or, a VRBO raises the beds for our tourists. So then we get more tourist funding. So there are plenty of benefits to the dingy property that I feel are being overlooked. And I feel that it's just bringing people in for tourism, bringing people in for businesses, utilizing local, these plans are great. If you want to come up with an agreement with the people that want to purchase the property to give you warm fuzzies that they're going to use local help to refurbish this property, fine. But I just feel like the stubbornness I'm stubborn myself, I guess, on the opposite way, so we're all stubborn. But I just feel like we're overlooking still the potential that's available here at the proposal that's given. And I feel like we have enough problems to deal with. We can't figure out, and I don't care where fire department goes, we need a fire department, we need a new police station. The last thing we need to do is sit here and drag out having to tear down a bunch of buildings when somebody is willing to put forth the money and the effort to make it look nice. I mean, come on. We have bigger fish to fry. It's just frustrating that this is just where everybody's dying on this sword, and I just think it's frustrating.
Alder Steiner.
First off, I just want to mention that Ovine's Peony Farm is not in Beaver Dam. It's also closer to Randolph. It's in the middle of nowhere. I have been there. It's nice. But more to the point is, if we sell this property to the other buyers here, there is no accountability.
Yes.
There is nothing we can do to hold them accountable to any of the proposed work that they're doing. There's no developer agreement, nothing. So if all of a sudden they hit a wall, like there's a death in the family and all of a sudden they have to spend a whole lot of money, or they realize there's a project here that they just can't afford, if they stop there, then what happens to that property? If they realize that that barn just is going to collapse on them as they're building it, well, then what? They can't afford to build a new barn. Maybe they don't want to put the money into it. There's zero accountability to this. So as this goes, they may have passion now. They may want, yes, I want to do this, and may be grand and beautiful and everything else under the sun, and it may want to bring more people into the community, to tourists. Like, I'm a little skeptical on that, but that's regardless point. The point is that if all of a sudden they decide 10 years, 15 years, 20 years down the road that they're done, what's going to happen to this property? Most often these farms don't sell as standalone properties. They're too expensive. There's one that's going up for sale right now just outside of town. It's at 1.2 million. Not many people are going to want to purchase that. There's not a lot of money in the business that you're doing there, especially with the amount of work that this property is going to need. You're not going to net a gain. The biggest way that this property will sell again is auctioned off in lots. It's an inevitability of this land. We have the opportunity here to decide how that lot gets auctioned off. We have the opportunity here to set this motion to get this one plot of land in the middle of town to look like it's part of the town and not just this standalone venue that's out there. As far as long-term thinking goes, putting a venue here can lower the land values of all those buildings, all those houses next to it, up to 1 to 5%. I've actually talked to a realtor, I've heard from this. This is actually a possibility to happen, which if the land values go down, our taxable income value goes down as well. So we lose money on the ordeal. One way or the other, we can decide if we can make money 50 years down the road or lose money in the next 5 to 10 years.
Alder Reed.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, still for the dingy property, I've just been disgusted for so very, very, very long. I did not want to make this purchase, and we did know about both of the buyers right before we put our bids in. I'm so sick and tired of acting like
That's
there was
not
no
true.
idea.
That you are stating a complete falsehood. Is that true, Attorney Johnson?
No, that's not.
Exactly. You are
It was
completely
right
incorrect.
before we put
No,
the bid
it
in.
wasn't.
It was at the last minute,
Oh my
but we
God.
had some heads
It was
up.
not.
Well, you know what? I'd like to hear what Alder Reed has to say.
Well, I would like her to not lie.
Well, okay, fine.
At this
but-
point, I'm trying to right a wrong. I mean, I feel like we have such a wonderful opportunity here. I mean, if we don't sell it to them, if we wind up going with a developer, again, we were looking at cost between $1 and $2 million just for putting in infrastructure. And then we have no idea what kind of offers are going to be made. There's no way they're going to offer us what they are going to require us to put in ahead of time. We're just talking about, oh, we might lose some money in the future and it might get divided up in 10 years. We're going to lose some money now, a lot of money right now, and maybe get it back over the next 20 years if we go with a developer. This is just such a mess.
Mayor Hammer.
I was against the city purchasing this property from the beginning. The city has there's no reason to be, if they're looking at buying land, we should be looking at buying land for commercial or industrial use. You should not be looking to buy land for residential development. And this was a nightmare from the get-go, and my personal opinion is to take advantage and sell it to the people that have provided their proposal. As for the other ones, the James Street property that should just be thrown in the trash. And definitely on the Tower Drive, more research has to be done into that. So.
Alder Gray.
Well, I mean, first of all, the city, all cities is pretty standard on purchasing property and doing residential developments. It's kind of a basic function of municipal government is to increase our tax base. That's part of the reason we're here. So that's kind of a silly statement. But it's also part of our 2050 plan, like our roadmap is. But anyway, I am for something happening with, the Dingy property is the main property that we do need something to happen with. I personally wanted it to be developed and to residential housing. I do still believe that is its best use. That is the best use of that property. And no, it won't cost us $1 to $2 million to do it. That's the entire cost of the project. That's not the entire cost borne on the city. That's not how development works. The problem is we don't have any of that. So now we have the option of to move forward with this and to create a legitimate contract with them, a legitimate developers agreement, because this is not one, or to go back to a more of an RFI, RFP process and try to find more developers. But this, we should not move forward with. This does, like Sarah mentioned, it's too much risk and too little reward. We need very clear outlines on how they're going to do this, the timeline that they're going to do this, and they need to be accountable to make sure that happens. Just like if we were developing it anywhere else and anyone else was developing it for any other use, that is standard, that is normal. We need to make sure it's done. Especially since ARPA funds were used to purchase it, we need to make sure that its use is conforming with ARPA funds. At the very least, I think the least that we could possibly do is remove all the blight that could probably qualify. But that would actually need to happen instead of them doing something with the barn in 10 years. That actually needs to happen on a reasonable timeline. We can't just sell it and hope that it happens. That's silly. So if you want to move forward with these buyers, we need an actual developers agreement. We need something more concrete and a real timeline, and we need them to be held accountable. Or we should go back to looking for more development and something else there. But either way, we can't just be like, yay, let's sell it. That's a horrible decision on many levels. And I mean, Alder Steiner mentioned some of the potentialities of not doing an appraisal or underselling ourselves. And that is real. If we are a city, we can't just undersell a property. That's a liability to our taxpayers. That means we're selling, so if this is worth $700,000 and we sell it for $580,000, we're undercutting our tax base by $120,000. That's not acceptable. That is the thing. Like, there are a lot, but that's even just, that's minor compared to having an actual developers agreement, which we do not have anything even remotely similar to. I'm not comfortable just selling it and hoping that something happens, because this is, I mean, it was mentioned a property that's for sale just outside of Columbus. Almost the exact same thing, just bigger and a lot prettier and a lot nicer and turnkey. It's also a lavender farm. It's also a barn wedding venue. It also has all of these things, and it's for sale right now. But it's about 3 acres larger and a bit more private. But anyway, this needs to be something that's fully fleshed out if that's the direction that council wants to go. Like, I can't move forward with this until there's an actual agreement for it. But yeah, Tower Drive, I think we just, well, not Tower Drive. I'm still torn on the fire station being on Tower Drive, but I do think we need to figure out something completely different for the old Ford store. I think we need to start discussing going back to an RFP process, because that's a great commercial property. We need something there.
Alder Finkler.
I propose we just stop talking about Tower Drive and the Old Countryside property tonight because we already know more conversation needs to happen. We need to figure out what we're gonna do about Dingy property, and we need to figure out now. We've dragged this out long enough. This is getting ridiculous. And if the answer is a builder's agreement, we can work with them, whatever. I don't know what the correct answer forward is, other than we need to work with this couple that wants to purchase the Dingy property and move forward on that. Like, that's just where we need to go with it, but we need to figure this out tonight and we need to move forward. And if we're gonna talk about losing property value by 1 to 4%, okay, my house is right on the other side of there, and the property value of my house since I've moved here has gone up hundreds of thousands of dollars, so 1%, I'll take it, so they can have that property.
Alder Steiner.
I have to ask this question of Mr. Johnson there, because if I don't, my wife's probably going to yell at me, but she was concerned about a 1031 being triggered if we sell this so quickly. I don't know if that's a viable thing that we have to worry about. Okay. I didn't think so, but we wanted to make sure that nothing was going to happen of that.
No, you don't need to worry about that. Other things, yes, but not that.
Yeah, there are a lot of words in just something this. It's not what we can do.
I'm sorry, Chris, I see your light is on. Have I been ignoring you or?
No, I just didn't turn it off because then I won't turn it back on, so. I'm one step ahead of it.
Okay, so it sounds like we have some consensus on not furthering the discussion tonight on Tower Drive and James Street. Is that correct? Okay. So that leaves us with, how do we move forward with Dingy? And I guess I would also be interested in moving forward with this couple, if we need to do that via a different or a more detailed developer's agreement. That's my opinion. Alder Reed?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, at this point, I'm just looking for how to put together a correct and legal developers agreement that would follow the lines of ARPA. I'm also just very confused looking in the packets under the paragraph of review of the ARPA use funds, and it's, like saying we have until 2024 to obligate its ARPA funds, and I thought we already had obligated the ARPA funds for this.
You have not technically. You have
Okay.
in certain accounting ways you have, but
Okay.
the reporting period's 24th, so, I'm sorry, in 2024.
Okay.
So you have time to change your mind.
Okay, so we have
Well, you
obligated
do, though. I mean,
them.
You may not be comfortable with it, but it is legal and probably,
Not all that is legal, it's moral.
right. There's a moral, that's a different issue. I'm just talking from strictly the law and how it's worked and what advice we got from our experts, that's all.
I mean, I really feel that the proposal we've been sent really does do a good job of going over blight, and they're even offering to do the sewer improvements, and sewer was one of the choices of ARPA fund uses. So for me, it seems super perfect. We just need to work on the technicalities.
Alder Finkler?
I'm with Trina on that. I'm really confused how this proposal doesn't better align with ARPA funds than the original reason why the city purchased it. And also would like to point out that, typically cities work with developers. They are not in the real estate business, so that is something that's kind of frustrating, but I'm fine with the developer's agreement. I'm fine if we want to put some warm fuzzies around there and we want to, protect whatever we feel we need to protect. But I just feel like we just need to get moving on this because we are right now a city that is owning a property that's full of blight itself now. So we are not maintaining the blight ourselves with ARPA funds that we purchased a property with. So we need to do something about this, and we need to get moving on it now.
Alder Gray.
I mean, it's obvious that, so there is a majority of the council that wants to sell this to the owners. So because, I mean, just basic head count, there is a majority that wants to sell this. So I think our best action is to figure out what the agreement looks like to move forward. Because there are 4 of you that want to sell it basically regardless. So we need to figure out at least a reasonable agreement to move forward and do this. Like, in that respect, I'm in the same lane as Molly. We need to just hash this out because it is an eventuality. There's a majority that want to sell it. So let's just hash out what the actual agreement is. For me, I think, yes, sewer is a big thing, but the money isn't actually going to that. So I think we at least need a timeline to have all of the blight removed from the property. The barns either need to, like I think that's probably the biggest thing is all of the property, all blight needs to be removed, either repaired or demolished within the timeline. I think that's the big thing of this property for me. I'm still very not super happy about an event venue going there, but that's a permit they're going to have to get in the future. So that's
Paul?
Thank you for a fascinating conversation. I knew this was going to be amazing, and it was. So following up with what Ian said and going back to with what Adam said a very long time ago, the proposal that you're looking at barely scratches the surface as to what you need to put into any kind of a purchase agreement. And the single biggest thing that's missing is time. And Adam said it, I think it was his first comment out of the box. He says, there is absolutely no guarantee that any of this is ever going to get done, and that is what will kill you. So if you're going to be serious about selling it, then you have, and this is something that you have to be ready to discuss with your potential buyer, is the sewer needs to go in now. The water needs to go in now. The stormwater needs to go in soon. The buildings need to be dealt with very soon. And I don't recall that being their plan. Their plan is to put their money into their house, which I certainly understand. And then worry about the other stuff as time goes on. And I understand that too, and that's, if I was buying it, that's exactly what I would do. But that doesn't help you any. So continuing entering into negotiations for the potential sale of this property to this particular group of people is worthy and not a bad idea, and I don't think that you will get the short end of the stick. But you may be very surprised when you sit down and start talking about the order that you need things to happen, that it's going to be completely different. So you may not be very close to having a deal with them. And if the desire is to try to sell it, that's fine. Then the city ought to be sitting down with the potential buyers and starting to have those conversations, because what you need and what they need aren't the same. And that, I think you're gonna find that you're a lot farther away, that this isn't as simple as 580, sure, here you go. We can do that in 30 days if you want to, but that's not a good idea. So there's 2 ways to go about selling it, and one is just the quick and dirty, and here, buy the property as is and give me my 580 and we'll all go home. That doesn't do you any good. And doesn't do them any good either, to be real honest. But, so, selling it is one thing, but then getting the deal done, it will be a different thing.
Alder,
Thanks. Thank you.
I just want to point out that in their timeline within this packet is not them concentrating initially on the farmhouse. They have had, or the actual house, they've had many conversations and have brought up many times that they have had that assessed that is livable as is. And I took a tour of that property, and more power to them. If they are willing to live in that property and improve the other buildings, I think that is fabulous, because I know if I walked in there with my husband, I'd be like, oh, hell no. But what I would like to point out is the initial things that they are working on, according to their timeline in the proposal, is roof and structural repair on the big barn, roof on the small barn, and sewer and water permitting. So the items that you had mentioned that they should be working on right away, that is their plan. Like, so I'm okay with us coming,
Yes.
right, and I'm okay with us coming up with a pen to paper agreement, but what I don't want construed is that, that we are that far apart on the expectations. And I just want to correct that, because what you said we need to do first aligns completely with this, and I don't think anybody up here is disagreeing with coming up with an agreement with them. I think we just need to start the ball rolling on it.
And that's fine, but there are dollars involved here. And,
We should have thought of that when we bought the property.
well, no, those are completely different dollars.
Yeah, very
That's a completely different,
What's up with it?
that's a completely different conversation. The issue that you're going to run into is that there is not a development agreement that I can write that will guarantee the timeline will be followed. As an example, and I'm just throwing out numbers basically. $200,000 to put a sewer in, $200,000 to put a water in, $150,000 to do the roof. Okay, where is that? If that money is available, super great. Your development agreement will say the water will be hooked up within within 90 days. The sewer will be hooked up within 90 days. The barn will be remediated and repaired within 180 days. If those dates aren't met, there's nothing. I can put all kinds of great stuff in there, but
You're saying you can't come up with a remedy?
at the end of the day, the remedy is not going to be all that great. Because you don't get the property back. And if somebody else has got a better idea as to what your remedy is to protect you at that point, I'm all ears.
They have to
But,
come up with a letter of credit. They won't- they
well,
can't afford it.
a letter of credit would be a tremendously great idea,
But it won't.
which also adds costs onto their side of it. So, I mean, this gets to be numbers and big numbers really fast.
Yeah.
So, and if they can do it, and if they're prepared, super, wonderful, that's great. But you have to be prepared for that conversation.
Alder Gray?
Yeah, and I mean, that's exactly it. Selling it isn't as simple as what some people would like it to be. We do have to protect our interest and our constituents. Like, just selling it isn't the answer. I'm not against trying to come up with an agreement with them. We do need the remedies. Like, the letter of credit is the ideal. I don't know if that's even a possibility. I don't know what other kind of stick we could wave for things. That could take some creative thinking. But we need an agreement. In my opinion, the bare minimum is like the water, sewer, stormwater, and the blight has to be fixed within a certain amount of time. The rest of it, the interior of the buildings, I have less concern of personally. But I think our agreement needs to have those in it, and we need to have some sort of remedy. We need some sort of stick to guarantee that happens. Otherwise, just selling it is not a logical path forward. That's just not good business. But I think that's as much as we can really accomplish tonight. We need to start actually talking with the potential buyers and coming up with an agreement. I think that's more of a behind-the-scenes staff actually starting, like Attorney Johnson, helping draft actual documents.
Alder Finkler?
That's what I was gonna say. I mean, what more do we have to discuss tonight? We can sit here and make assumptions on how they can afford water, what's gonna happen here. I could give you, 18 million scenarios on how this will go. None of us are gonna know until we sit down and we try to come up with an agreement. And you know what? And if we sit down and we can't come up with an agreement and we have to go to a different RFP process, so be it. But at least that I know we did the right thing and trying to come up with an agreement first before completely dismissing them.
I think that's where we are.
Alder Reed?
Oh, no, I'm just really glad on how the plan is going for getting an agreement and an understanding started. I mean, I'm not super worried about the timeline. The blight didn't happen quickly, and it might take a couple of years. I just want to have a reasonable time frame that they should be able to meet. I don't want to say the barn roof should be fixed in, 90 days literally. That part just wouldn't be a realistic expectation. Thank you.
Okay. So we know what we need to do. Chris, can you and the staff start a
Well, we have
conversation?
a meeting tomorrow with our development team, and we can talk about that.
Thursday.
Thursday, is it
Yeah,
Tuesday only? Okay, Thursday. Thank you, Todd. I need some legal advice on the days.
It's almost Wednesday.
A couple more hours.
In that case, I will take a motion to adjourn.
I will move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Alder Finkler and a second from Alder Gray. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.